It is late. The world outside your window has settled into a deep and quiet, dark. But here, in the stillness of your room, your mind is anything but still. Perhaps you are lying in bed, the ceiling a blank canvas for your thoughts. Or perhaps your face is lit by the pale, blue glow of a screen, your thumb scrolling through a life that is not yours, through news that agitates, through images that stir a quiet sense of lack. There is a weight, a familiar pressure behind the eyes, a tightness in the chest. It is the hum of a machine that will not turn off. The machine of planning, of worrying, of replaying conversations, of rehearsing arguments, of tallying obligations and anxieties. It is the feeling of being stuck, of running in place while the world rushes past. If this sounds familiar, know that you are not alone. This experience, this subtle but persistent friction with life, is not a personal failing. It is the background radiation of our modern world. We are carried along by an invisible current, a river of constant doing, of endless striving, of believing that peace is just one more achievement away, one more purchase away, one more destination away. We chase happiness in the external world, believing it is a place we can arrive at, only to find that it recedes from us with every step we take. This feeling, this deep and quiet ache of unsatisfactoriness, was given a name 2,500 years ago. It was called dukkha, and the diagnosis of this condition was the very starting point of a profound spiritual science, a practical psychology dedicated to understanding the intricate workings of the human mind. It is not a religion that asks for blind faith, but rather an invitation to look inward, with honesty, with courage, and with compassion. It offers a set of tools, not commandments, for navigating the turbulent waters of our own consciousness. It suggests that the peace we so desperately seek is not a treasure to be found somewhere out there, but a capacity to be cultivated, right here, within us. Tonight, we will begin that journey of cultivation, not by adding more, but by learning to let go, not by running faster, but by learning to be still. This is an invitation to explore that path, to find the anchor in the storm of your own mind, and to discover the quiet, unshakable peace that is your birthright. The journey begins now, with a single, simple breath. The feeling we spoke of earlier, that quiet hum of anxiety in the dead of night, is the entry point. It is the symptom that brings us to the doctor. But to truly understand the cure, we must first have a clear and honest diagnosis of the condition itself. In the ancient language of the Buddha, this condition is called dukkha. Now, this word is often translated into English simply as suffering, and that single word has led to a great deal of misunderstanding. It can paint this path as pessimistic, as a philosophy that sees life as nothing but a grim and painful ordeal. But this is a gross simplification. The reality is far more subtle, far more precise, and ultimately, far more hopeful. To truly grasp the meaning of dukkha is to take the first and most crucial step toward its cessation. It is not a judgment on the world, but a clear-eyed observation of our experience within it. Think of dukkha not as a single, monolithic block of misery, but as a spectrum of experience, ranging from the obvious to the incredibly subtle. The teachings describe it in 3 distinct layers, each one going deeper into the heart of our unease. The first layer is the most obvious. It is called dukkha dukkhata, which can be translated as the suffering of pain. This is the dukkha that we all know and recognize without any need for explanation. It is the sharp pain of a stubbed toe, the throbbing ache of a migraine. It is the searing emotional pain of betrayal, the hollow grief that comes with the death of a loved one. It is the anxiety of a looming deadline, the humiliation of failure, the sting of a harsh word. It is birth, sickness, old age, and death. This form of suffering is an undeniable part of the fabric of sentient life. There is no one who is exempt from it. It is raw, direct, and visceral. To deny this reality, to pretend that life does not contain these unavoidable pains, would be a form of delusion. The path of wisdom does not ask us to pretend this pain doesn't exist. It simply asks us to acknowledge it, to see it for what it is, a natural, though difficult, part of the human condition. But if this were the only form of suffering, our lives would be a series of peaceful moments punctuated by occasional, acute crises. We all know this is not the case. The unease is more constant than that. This brings us to the second layer, a more subtle and pervasive form called viparinama dukkha. This is the suffering of change. This is the suffering inherent in our happy moments. It sounds like a paradox, but consider it closely. Think of a perfect, beautiful day on vacation. The sun is warm. The company is good. The scenery is breathtaking. In that moment, there is happiness. But lurking just beneath the surface, or perhaps in the back of the mind, is a quiet, nagging thought. This will end soon. I have to go back to work on Monday. That subtle shadow of anxiety, that knowledge that this pleasant experience is impermanent and will slip through our fingers, is a form of dukkha. It is the pain of knowing that the delicious meal will be over, that the joyful celebration will conclude, that the bloom of youth will eventually fade. Our entire modern culture is a frantic attempt to battle this form of dukkha. We take thousands of pictures, not just to remember a moment, but to try and pin it down, to freeze it, to deny its transient nature. We cling to pleasant experiences, trying to extract every last drop of pleasure from them. And in the very act of clinging, we create a tension, a fear of loss that pollutes the experience itself. We are like a child at the beach, frantically trying to build a castle with wet sand, feeling a constant, low-level anxiety as the sun and the tide work to inevitably reclaim it. The happiness we derive from pleasant, temporary conditions is itself a source of potential suffering, because the moment those conditions change, our happiness vanishes. This leads us to the third and most profound layer. This is the one that truly gets to the heart of that sleepless night, that constant, humming disquiet. It is called sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the most difficult to see, because it is the very water we swim in. It is the fundamental unsatisfactoriness and unreliability of life itself. It is the baseline level of friction that exists simply because we are alive and conscious in a world of ever-changing conditions. It is the feeling that even when nothing is overtly wrong, something is still not quite right. Imagine driving a car with a wheel that is just slightly out of balance. On a smooth road, you might not notice it much, but there is always a subtle vibration, a slight shakiness. You can never fully relax. That vibration is sankhara dukkha. Our lives are built upon a vast, intricate web of conditions. Our peace of mind is conditioned on our health, our job security, our relationships, the state of the economy, the political climate, even the weather. We are constantly, and mostly unconsciously, working to hold all these conditions in place, to manage and maintain our fragile sense of stability. This constant, low-grade effort, this vigilance against the inherent instability of life, is a form of deep, pervasive stress. It is the suffering of being a self that feels separate from the world, a self that needs to be defended, propped up, and gratified. It is the burden of this very selfhood that is at the core of sankhara dukkha. It is the unseen river, the current of conditioned existence that carries us along, always pushing us to seek the next thing, the next moment, believing that final, lasting satisfaction is just around the corner, while it is the very nature of corners that there is always another one to turn. To make this perfectly clear, the teachings offer a powerful and practical parable, the story of the two arrows. Imagine you are walking through a forest, and you are struck in the leg by an arrow. This is painful. The physical sensation is sharp and unpleasant. This is the first arrow. It represents the unavoidable pains of life we spoke of earlier: sickness, loss, rejection, misfortune. These first arrows are an inevitable part of the journey. There is no spiritual practice that can make you entirely immune to them. But then, what do we usually do? We don't just experience the pain of the first arrow, we immediately launch a second arrow into ourselves, right into the same wound. We say, "Why me? This is terrible. I can't believe this happened. This shouldn't be happening. My whole day is ruined. This is a disaster." We layer on a story, a judgment, a resistance to the reality of the situation. This flurry of mental and emotional reaction, this internal narrative of outrage and despair, is the second arrow. The pain from the first arrow is unavoidable, but the suffering from the second arrow is entirely self-inflicted. It is optional. The first arrow represents dukkha dukkhata and viparinama dukkha, the pain of pain and the pain of change. They are fired by the world. The second arrow is sankhara dukkha. It is the suffering of our conditioned reactions. It is fired by our own mind. The entire purpose of this path is not to build a shield that deflects all of life's first arrows. The purpose is to develop the wisdom and the presence of mind to not shoot the second arrow. It is to learn how to experience the raw, clean pain of the first arrow without adding the immense, exhausting, and unnecessary burden of the second. So, when we say that the first noble truth is the truth of dukkha, we are not saying that life is nothing but pain. We are making a diagnosis. We are acknowledging that we are walking through the forest of life, and first arrows are a reality. And we are acknowledging that our habitual, untrained response is to constantly shoot ourselves with second, third, and fourth arrows, turning a moment of pain into a long season of suffering. This diagnosis is not pessimistic. It is the opposite. It is empowering, because if the second arrow comes from our own mind, then its source is within our sphere of influence. We can learn to put down the bow. By understanding this unseen river, by seeing how its currents are fed by our own reactions, we move from being a helpless victim tossed about by the waves to a navigator who begins to understand the map. The question that naturally arises then is this: what fuels this impulse? What is it within us that so compulsively reaches for that second arrow? This leads us directly to the source of the river, the cause of dukkha. If dukkha is the diagnosis of our condition, the persistent feeling of a deep, underlying friction with life, then the second great truth of this path identifies its cause. It gives a name to the force that powers the engine of our discontent. It answers the question, why do we shoot the second arrow? Why, after being struck by the unavoidable pains of life, do we insist on adding our own layer of mental anguish? The answer is a single, powerful word: tanha. Like dukkha, this word from the ancient Pali language is often given a simple, incomplete translation. It is usually rendered as desire, but its meaning is far more specific and potent. Tanha does not mean every single want or aspiration. It does not refer to the wholesome desire to help another being, or the aspiration to become a wiser, more compassionate person. Tanha is more accurately translated as thirst or craving. This translation is key because it implies a state of lack. Thirst arises from a feeling of emptiness, of dehydration. It is a desperate, urgent grasping for something external to fill an internal void. Tanha is the deep, persistent, and often unconscious conviction that our well-being depends on getting something from the outside world or getting rid of something in our experience. It is the very mechanism that keeps us running on the hamster wheel of modern life, forever chasing and forever fleeing. The teachings identify this thirst in three primary forms, three distinct channels through which this restless energy flows. The first, and most easily recognized, is kama tanha, the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the craving for agreeable sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and physical sensations. Our entire modern economy is a vast and sophisticated engine designed to stimulate and exploit this specific thirst. Every advertisement you have ever seen is a direct appeal to kama tanha. The commercial for the luxury car isn't just selling transportation. It's selling the feeling of the smooth leather, the admiring glances of others, the sound of a powerful engine. The food advertisement on social media is meticulously crafted to trigger a craving for a specific taste and texture. This form of thirst whispers to us constantly, if you could just have that, you would be happy. If you could taste that, listen to that, wear that, own that, then this feeling of inner lack would finally dissolve. And so we chase. We work long hours to afford the objects of our desire. We fill our homes with things. We curate playlists of perfect sounds and feeds of perfect images. But what is the result? There is a momentary pleasure, a brief satisfaction when the craving is met. The new gadget is exciting for a week. The gourmet meal is delicious for an hour. The beautiful song lasts for 3 minutes. But the thirst itself, the underlying mechanism of craving, is not quenched. In fact, it is strengthened. Having satisfied one desire, the mind immediately begins searching for the next. The satisfaction is temporary, but the habit of seeking satisfaction externally becomes more deeply ingrained. It creates a restless, hungry mind, always scanning the horizon for the next source of pleasure, unable to find peace in the present moment because the present moment is seen merely as a launching pad for the next acquisition. This is the endless cycle of consumerism, a promise of fulfillment that, by its very nature, can only lead to more craving. The second form of this thirst is deeper, more intimately tied to our sense of self. It is called bhavatanha, the thirst for being, or for becoming. This is not just a craving for a pleasant object. It is the craving to be a certain kind of person, to construct and solidify a particular identity. It is the desperate need for existence, for significance, for a permanent place in a transient world. This thirst fuels our ambition. It is the drive to get the promotion, not just for the money, but for the title, for the validation it provides. It is the craving for social status, for fame, for a certain number of followers or likes, for the approval and admiration of others. Bhavatanha is the architect of the ego. It works tirelessly to build a story about who we are: a successful professional, a desirable partner, an intelligent person, a spiritual person, and then it clings to that identity with ferocious intensity. This is a profound source of dukkha, because this constructed self is, by its very nature, fragile and dependent on external conditions. When we receive praise, the ego is gratified and we feel a temporary high. But when we are met with criticism, failure, or simply ignored, our very sense of being feels threatened, and we experience immense pain. This thirst is the engine of comparison and envy. We look at the curated lives of others and feel that our own existence is somehow lacking. We are constantly striving to become more, to be better, to arrive at a future version of ourselves that will finally be worthy of peace. This thirst ensures that we are never at home in our own skin, because our present self is always seen as an imperfect project, a stepping stone to a more validated, more secure future being. Then there is the third form, the shadow side of craving. It is called vibhava tanha, the thirst for non-being or for annihilation. If the first two forms of thirst are about pulling things toward us, this one is about violently pushing them away. It is the intense craving for an unpleasant experience to cease. It is the voice in our head that screams, "I can't stand this feeling," when we are anxious or heartbroken. It is the desperate wish for an annoying person to disappear, or for a difficult life situation to simply not exist. This is the energy of aversion, of hatred, of denial. When we are stuck in traffic, the rage we feel is vibhavatana. When we recoil from our own feelings of shame or inadequacy, that is vibhavatana. We declare war on a part of our reality, believing that if we can just eliminate the offending element, we will find peace. At its most extreme, this can manifest as self-destructive behavior or suicidal ideation, the ultimate desire to annihilate an existence that has become unbearable. But in its daily form, it creates a constant state of internal conflict. By refusing to accept what is, by struggling against the unpleasant realities of life, we generate immense friction and tension. We exhaust ourselves in a futile battle against the inevitable. This is precisely the force that grabs the second arrow. The first arrow of pain arrives, and vibhavatana immediately rises up, demanding that the pain not be there, creating the suffering of resistance. There is an old and powerful story that illustrates the nature of tanha perfectly. Imagine a man lost at sea, adrift on a small raft. He has gone for days without fresh water, and he is tormented by a raging thirst. He is on the verge of death. All around him, as far as he can see, is water, an endless, shimmering ocean of it. In his desperation, he cups his hands, dips them into the ocean, and drinks the salt water. For one fleeting second, the coolness in his mouth feels like salvation. It is wet. It is relief. But this relief is a treacherous illusion. Almost immediately, the immense concentration of salt hits his system, and his dehydration becomes exponentially worse. The salt water, instead of quenching his thirst, makes it more intense, more agonizing. Yet, driven by the madness of that thirst, he drinks again, and then again, hastening his own demise with every single sip. We are that person, and the salt water is the world of sense pleasures, of ego validation, and of aversion. Tanha is the desperate thirst that convinces us to drink. We feel an inner void, a spiritual dehydration, and we believe that the objects of our craving can fill it. We drink the salt water of a new purchase, a promotion, a fleeting romance, or the momentary satisfaction of anger. And for a moment, it feels like relief, but it only serves to deepen the underlying thirst, to strengthen the habit of seeking outside ourselves, to make us more dependent on unreliable external conditions for our well-being. The very thing we believe will save us is the very thing that perpetuates our suffering. Understanding tanha is not about judging ourselves for having desires. It is not about becoming a passionless automaton. It is about seeing the mechanism clearly. It is about recognizing the difference between a wholesome aspiration and the blind, desperate, clinging quality of thirst. You can appreciate a beautiful sunset without the tanha of needing it to last forever. You can enjoy a pleasant conversation without the tana of needing that person's constant approval. The problem is not the object, it is the clinging, it is the attachment, it is the mistaken belief that our inner peace is contingent upon an outer world that is, by its very nature, uncontrollable and impermanent. By seeing tanha for what it is, the engine of dukkha, the thirst for salt water, we can begin to change our relationship to it. We can learn to watch this thirst arise in the mind, to feel its pull, its urgency, and to simply not act on it. In that pause, in that moment of mindful recognition, its power begins to wane. But this leads us to an even deeper question. Why are we so deeply convinced that the salt water will quench our thirst in the first place? What is the fundamental misunderstanding that keeps us reaching for it, time and time again, despite all the evidence of the suffering it causes? The answer to this lies in the deepest root of all, a fundamental blindness to the way things truly are. We have now traced the stream of our discontent from its most obvious expression, the state of dukkha, to its powerful engine, the driving thirst of tanha. We see the illness, and we see the immediate cause of the symptoms. But a truly deep diagnosis must ask one more question, the ultimate why. Why are we so consumed by this unquenchable thirst? Why, like the man adrift at sea, do we continue to drink the salt water of craving, even when a lifetime of experience shows us that it only makes us thirstier? The answer is the deepest root of all, the very ground from which all suffering grows. The answer is a state known as avidya. Avidya is the Pali word for ignorance. But just as with dukkha and tanha, this simple English translation can be profoundly misleading. Avidya does not mean a lack of intelligence, a lack of education, or a lack of factual information. A person can hold multiple PhDs, be able to recite volumes of scientific data, and still be completely submerged in the darkness of avidya. This is not an ignorance of facts. It is a fundamental ignorance of nature, a deep and pervasive misperception of the very reality we inhabit. It is a kind of spiritual blindness. The most effective way to understand avidya is to imagine that we are all born into the world holding a map. This map is supposed to guide us through the territory of life, leading us toward happiness and away from suffering. We consult it for every major decision. The problem is, this map is dangerously, fundamentally wrong. Avidya is the state of continuing to use this flawed map, believing it to be true, and then being constantly bewildered and pained when the territory doesn't match what the map has promised. So what does this misleading map show us? It is founded on three great illusions, three core misreadings of reality that create the foundation for all our troubles. The first great error on our map is its depiction of permanence. The map shows us a world of solid, stable objects and dependable situations. It tells us that we can build a secure home on our career, our wealth, our physical health, our relationships, our youth. It encourages us to construct our identity and our sense of safety on these external pillars, implying that they will last. And so, following the map, we invest all of our energy in acquiring and strengthening these things. But the territory itself, the reality of the world, is defined by the absolute law of anicca, or impermanence. Everything is in a state of constant flux. Your body is changing with every breath. Your thoughts and feelings are a fleeting parade. Your relationships evolve. The economy shifts. Seasons turn. Nothing is static. Because we are navigating with a map that promises permanence in a territory that is inherently transient, we are set up for constant suffering. We feel shocked and betrayed when we lose a job, when a relationship ends, when our health falters, when a loved one dies. The pain we feel is the jarring gap between our map's promise and reality's truth. Our clinging, our tanha, is a direct result of this error. We cling to things precisely because our map tells us they are solid, and we are terrified of the moment we realize they are made of flowing water. The second great error on the map concerns the location of happiness. Our map has giant, glowing symbols marking all the supposed sources of true, lasting well-being. These symbols are placed over things like material wealth, sensory pleasure, fame, power, and romantic love. The map's primary instruction is, go here. If you can reach these points, you will be happy. You will be satisfied. Following these directions is the great project of our lives. But this is a catastrophic mislabeling of the territory. As we have seen, these things are the very salt water that cannot quench our thirst. They are sources of fleeting pleasure, yes, but because they are all impermanent and subject to change, relying on them for our happiness is the very definition of dukkha. Avidya is the blindness that prevents us from seeing this pattern. We have a lifetime of empirical data showing that a new possession brings a short-lived thrill, that a pleasant experience quickly fades, that external validation is a fickle and unreliable master. Yet, every single day, we unfold the same flawed map and follow the same faulty directions, believing that this time it will be different. We fundamentally misidentify the sources of our suffering as the potential sources of our salvation. The third and most profound error on this map is the image it presents of the map reader. At the very center of the map is a bold, solid, unchanging icon that says, me. This map tells us that we are a fixed, separate, independent entity, an ego, a self. This I is the hero of the story, the permanent subject in a world of temporary objects. Our primary mission, according to the map, is to protect, promote, and please this self. And so we live our lives accordingly. We defend my opinions. We polish my reputation. We feel the sting of my failures and swell with the pride of my accomplishments. We see the world through a lens of what it can do for me. But the reality of the territory, the truth that this path reveals, is the truth of anatta, or non-self. The Buddha looked with profound clarity at his own experience and discovered that this solid, separate self, this CEO in the headquarters of the mind, simply could not be found. What he found instead was a dynamic, interdependent process. He found a stream of ever-changing components, a physical body, fleeting feelings, shifting perceptions, habitual mental patterns, and a flickering consciousness. The self is not a thing, but an event. It is more like a wave in the ocean than a separate drop of water. The wave has a temporary form and identity, but it is nothing other than the ocean itself. Our belief in a separate, permanent self is the ultimate illusion, and it is the direct cause of the greatest loneliness, fear, and conflict we experience. There is a simple story that captures the essence of avidya perfectly. A man is out on the street one night, down on his hands and knees, crawling around under a single, bright streetlight. A friend comes along and asks him, "What are you doing?" The man looks up, his face etched with worry, and says, "I'm looking for my keys. I can't get into my house." The friend, wanting to help, gets down on his own hands and knees and begins to search as well. They search for a long time, combing every inch of the pavement under the light, but find nothing. Finally, The friend asks, "Are you absolutely certain you dropped them right here?" The man replies without hesitation, "Oh no, I dropped them over there, in that dark alley." The friend is stunned. "Then why in the world are we searching for them here?" he asks. The man replies, "Because the light is so much better here. We are all this, man. The keys are true, sustainable peace and happiness. The dark alley is our own inner world, the complex, sometimes messy, and often unexamined landscape of our own mind. The streetlight is the external world of sensory experience, material possessions, status, and distraction. Avidya is the powerful, deeply ingrained illusion that makes us search for the keys to our own well-being where it is easiest to look, not where they were actually lost. We search for peace in a bigger salary, a new relationship, or a tropical vacation because the light is better there. These things are tangible, measurable, and socially approved. The work of looking inward, of sitting with our own discomfort, of examining the nature of our own thoughts and feelings, that is like searching in the dark alley. It requires courage, it requires patience, and it requires a different kind of illumination, the steady, gentle light of mindfulness. Avidya, this deeply flawed map, is therefore the ultimate wellspring of our troubles. This fundamental ignorance of impermanence, suffering, and non-self is what gives rise to the desperate thirst of tanha. And this thirst, this craving for what is transient, and this aversion to what is inevitable, is what manifests as the chronic friction and unsatisfactoriness of dukkha. They form a causal chain. Ignorance leads to craving, which leads to suffering. To finally see that the map you have been using your entire life is wrong is not a moment of despair. It is a moment of liberation. It is the moment you stop blaming the territory for not conforming to your map. It is the moment you stop running in circles and can finally begin to ask for new directions. It means that a true path, a correct map, must exist. And it is this very revelation that opens the door to the cure, to a set of instructions for navigating life as it truly is. A guide that leads not to more confusion and pain, but toward clarity and a lasting peace. Having journeyed into the heart of our own confusion, having seen that we navigate life with a flawed map of avidya, a profound and urgent question arises. What now? To realize one's map is wrong is, at first, disorienting, but it is also the most hopeful moment imaginable, for it is only then that we become willing to seek out a true one. The teachings of the Buddha do not leave us lost in this realization. Instead, they offer us a new map, a framework so practical, so logical, and so deeply compassionate that it has been described not as a religious creed, but as a medical diagnosis from the most skilled physician the world has ever known. This framework is the very heart of the entire path. It is the foundation upon which all other practices are built. It is called the Four Noble Truths. These are not truths in the sense of dogmas that must be accepted with blind faith. They are presented as self-evident realities that can be investigated and verified by anyone with the courage and diligence to look deeply into their own experience. The word noble is significant. They are noble because they ennoble the person who understands them, lifting them from a state of confusion and reactivity to one of clarity, freedom, and profound compassion. Let us unpack this enlightened one's prescription, one truth at a time, following the exact method of a master physician treating a patient. The first noble truth is the physician's initial, unflinching diagnosis of the condition. It is the simple, direct statement: there is dukkha. As we have explored, this means there is suffering, stress, and a fundamental unsatisfactoriness in life as it is normally lived. The physician does not sugarcoat the diagnosis. He does not say, "Everything is fine, just think positive thoughts." He looks with clear and compassionate eyes at our condition and names it. He acknowledges the reality of the obvious pains of sickness, loss, and old age. He points to the more subtle suffering of change, the anxiety that shadows even our happiest moments, and he identifies the deepest, most pervasive friction of all, the inherent unsatisfactoriness of a life built on fleeting, unreliable conditions. To state this truth is not an act of pessimism. It is an act of supreme realism and courage. It is like turning on the lights in a cluttered, messy room. It might be uncomfortable at first to see the full extent of the disarray, but it is the absolutely necessary first step before any cleaning can begin. Acknowledging dukkha without blame or judgment is the noble act of facing reality. It is looking squarely at the wound so that it may be properly treated. The second noble truth is the physician's next step, identifying the cause, the etiology of the disease. It states, there is an origin of dukkha. Our suffering is not random. It is not inflicted upon us by an angry God or a meaningless universe. It does not arise without a cause. This is a revolutionary and empowering insight. The physician, through his profound investigation, discovered that the origin of dukkha is tanha, the thirst or craving that is itself fueled by the deep-seated ignorance of avidya. The cause of our suffering is not what happens to us. It is what we do in our own minds with what happens to us. It is our clinging to pleasant experiences, our aversion to unpleasant ones, and our fundamental confusion about the nature of ourselves and the world. The pain of the first arrow comes from the world, but the suffering of the second arrow comes from the tanha in our own hearts. By identifying the cause as internal, the Buddha places the power to heal directly into our own hands. If the cause of our suffering were our genetics, our past, our boss, or the economy, we would be helpless victims, forever at the mercy of forces beyond our control. But because the cause is our own craving and clinging, it means the cause is accessible. It is something we can work with. The physician has not just diagnosed the illness, he has found a cause that is treatable. This shifts the entire dynamic from one of passive victimhood to one of active engagement with our own liberation. The third noble truth is the physician's life-altering prognosis. After diagnosing the illness and identifying its cause, he delivers the most hopeful news imaginable. There is a cessation of dukkha. The condition is not terminal. There is a cure. This state of cessation is called nirodha, which literally means to extinguish. It refers to the complete extinguishing of the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion that are fanned by tanha and avidya. This is the radical promise of this path. It states that a life free from the relentless stress and friction of dukkha is not a utopian fantasy, but an attainable human reality. This state of cessation is also known by another name, nirvana. Nirvana is not a heavenly paradise you go to after you die. It is a state of mind that can be realized right here, in this very life. It is not the annihilation of the self, but the annihilation of the illusion of a separate self. What remains when the fires are extinguished is not a void, but a profound and radiant peace, an unshakable freedom, and a boundless compassion that arises from seeing things, at last, as they truly are. The third noble truth is the light at the end of the tunnel. It is the reason we undertake the journey. The physician is not just offering us a way to manage our symptoms. He is assuring us that complete recovery is possible. The fourth noble truth is the physician's practical, detailed treatment plan. It is the prescription. It states, there is a path leading to the cessation of dukkha. Knowing that a cure exists is wonderful, but it is not enough. We need to know how to attain it. This path is called the Noble Eightfold Path, or Magga. It is a set of 8 interconnected practices that, when cultivated together, systematically dismantle the causes of suffering and lead directly to the freedom of Nirodha. This path is not a linear sequence of steps to be completed one after the other, but rather a holistic program where each part supports and deepens all the others, like the strands of a single, strong rope. The Eightfold Path is traditionally grouped into 3 sections, providing a comprehensive training for our entire being. First is the training in wisdom, prajna. This includes right view, which is seeing the world through the lens of these 4 noble truths, and right intention, which is the resolve to renounce craving, to cultivate goodwill, and to cause no harm. It is about getting our perspective and our motivation aligned with reality. Second is the training in ethical conduct, sila. This includes right speech, speaking truthfully and kindly, right action, acting in ways that do not harm ourselves or others, and right livelihood, earning a living in a way that is ethical and does not contribute to the suffering of the world. This section is about living in the world with integrity, creating an external environment that is peaceful and conducive to the inner work of training the mind. Third is the training in mental discipline, samadhi. This includes right effort, the continuous, gentle effort to abandon unwholesome states of mind and cultivate wholesome ones. Right mindfulness, the practice of maintaining a moment-to-moment awareness of our body, feelings, and thoughts. And right concentration, the ability to unify the mind and focus it with unshakable calm. This is the direct, internal cultivation of the mind itself, weakening the habits of distraction and reactivity, and strengthening the qualities of stability and clarity. These 4 noble truths, taken together, form the perfect map. They provide a complete, logical, and actionable framework for human liberation. First, you accept the reality of your situation. There is a problem. Second, you understand what causes the problem. Third, you realize that a solution is possible. And fourth, you are given the precise, step-by-step instructions for implementing that solution. It is a path that moves from diagnosis to freedom. It is not based on wishful thinking or divine intervention, but on the clear law of cause and effect. If you cultivate the path, you will experience the cessation of suffering, just as surely as walking west will eventually lead you to the west. This is the prescription offered by the great physician. The medicine is the Eightfold Path. The only remaining question is whether we are willing to take it. Having been given the physician's prescription, the 4 noble truths, we are now ready to begin the treatment. The starting point for this healing journey, the very first step on the Noble Eightfold Path, is called samadhithi, or right view. This position as the first step is not arbitrary. Right view is the foundation, the compass, and the guiding light for the entire path. Without it, the other 7 steps, however diligently practiced, can lose their direction and fail to lead to liberation. If your view is distorted, your intentions will be skewed, your actions will be misguided, and your efforts will be wasted. To cultivate the path is, first and foremost, to cultivate clarity of vision. Imagine you have spent your entire life wearing a pair of eyeglasses that are smudged, warped, and covered in dust. Through these lenses, the world appears blurry, threatening, and confusing. You stumble frequently, mistake friends for foes, and feel a constant sense of anxiety because you can never quite trust what you are seeing. This is the state of avidya, or ignorance. The practice of right view is the process of taking off those old, distorted glasses and putting on a new pair with a perfect, clear prescription. The world itself doesn't change, but your ability to see it as it truly is transforms everything. Suddenly, the path becomes clear. Obstacles can be navigated. The true nature of things is revealed. This is the power of right view. It is crucial to understand what right view is not. It is not about adopting a new set of beliefs or blindly accepting a religious dogma. A person can memorize every word of the Buddhist scriptures and still lack even a glimmer of right view. It is not an intellectual exercise alone. While it begins with an intellectual understanding, accepting the Four Noble Truths as a plausible working hypothesis, its true essence is experiential. It is a direct seeing, a profound insight that arises from your own mindful investigation of reality. It is the difference between reading a travel guide about the Grand Canyon and standing on its edge at sunrise, seeing its vastness and beauty for yourself. One is information, the other is transformation. So, what does one see with right view? The vision can be broken down into two fundamental aspects. The first is a correct understanding of the law of ethical cause and effect, the principle known as karma or karma. In the West, this word has been widely misunderstood. Karma is not fate. It is not a system of predestination that locks you into a specific destiny. In fact, it is the very opposite. Karma is the law that guarantees our freedom, our agency. Nor is it a cosmic system of reward and punishment meted out by a divine judge. It is an impersonal, natural law, as reliable and observable as the law of gravity. The word karma literally means action. The law of karma simply states that every intentional action has a corresponding result. The most critical element here is intention, or cetana. It is the will, the volition, the mental impulse behind what we do, say, or think. Actions driven by wholesome intentions rooted in generosity, kindness, compassion, and clarity are called wholesome karma. These actions naturally lead to positive results, to pleasant experiences, and to a peaceful, happy mind. Conversely, actions driven by unwholesome intentions rooted in greed, hatred, and delusion are called unwholesome karma. These actions naturally lead to negative results, to painful experiences, and to a troubled, agitated mind. Understanding this law fundamentally changes our relationship with life. Without right view, when something bad happens, our default reaction is to see ourselves as a victim. We ask, why is this happening to me? We look for someone or something external to blame. Our parents, our society, our bad luck. With right view, the question shifts profoundly. We begin to ask, what were the causes and conditions, particularly the actions and intentions in my own mind that led to this result? We move from being the passive victim of a random world to being the active creator of our own experience. This does not mean that everything that happens to us is our fault. The first arrow often comes from outside, but our experience of that arrow, and whether we shoot a second one, is directly shaped by the karmic habits of our own mind. This understanding fosters a deep sense of personal responsibility and empowerment. Our happiness is not in the hands of fate. It is in our own hands, right now, in the quality of our very next intention. The second aspect of right view is the direct experiential seeing of the three marks of existence in all phenomena. We first encountered these as the core misunderstandings of avidya. Right view is the reversal of that ignorance. It is to see In every moment, the truth of anicca, impermanence, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, and anatta, non-self. It is to watch your own thoughts arise and pass away, and to see for yourself they are impermanent. It is to feel a moment of joy, and to notice the subtle anxiety of wanting it to last, and to see for yourself clinging to the impermanent leads to suffering. It is to look for the thinker behind the thought, the feeler behind the feeling, and to find only a flowing, selfless process, and to see for yourself there is no fixed, solid self. There is perhaps no story that illustrates the dawn of right view more powerfully than that of Kisa Gotami. She was a young woman in the time of the Buddha whose only child had tragically died. Consumed by an unbearable grief, she refused to accept his death. She clutched the small, lifeless body to her chest and wandered through her village, frantically begging everyone she met for a medicine that could bring her son back to life. Some mocked her, others pitied her, but no one could help her. Finally, a wise man, seeing her desperation, directed her to the Buddha, saying he was the great physician who might have the medicine she sought. Kisa Gotami ran to the Buddha and pleaded with him to restore her child. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion. He did not give her a lecture on acceptance or impermanence. He knew that such intellectual knowledge would be useless to a heart so shattered by grief. Instead, he gave her a task. He said, "To make the medicine, I need a special ingredient. I need you to go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed, but it must be from a house where no one, not a parent, a child, a spouse, or even a Savanthus, ever died." Ojan, filled with a desperate hope, Kisa Gotami began her quest. At the first house, she asked for a mustard seed, and the family gladly offered it. But when she asked the vital question, "Has anyone in this house ever died?" the woman replied, "Oh yes, I lost my husband last year." At the next house, the answer was the same. "We can give you 1,000 mustard seeds, but our beloved father died here just last month." She went from house to house, to the rich and to the poor, and the story was always the same. Every single family had been touched by death. Every home was a house of loss. The people would tell her, "The living are few, but the dead are many." As the day wore on and the sun began to set, a profound transformation occurred within her. The sharp, personal, isolating nature of her grief began to dissolve. Her suffering, which had felt like a unique curse inflicted only upon her, was revealed to be the universal, shared condition of all beings. The truth of anicca, of impermanence, was no longer a philosophical concept. She had seen it, felt it, experienced it in the shared sorrow of every person she met. She realized her son was part of the great, flowing river of life and death, and that her clinging to him was a struggle against reality itself. Her private tragedy had become a public truth. She gently laid her son's body down in the forest and returned to the Buddha. He simply looked at her and asked, "Did you bring the mustard seed?" And she replied, "The work is done, my lord. The dead are more numerous than the living." In that moment, Kisa Gotami was no longer just a grieving mother. She was a woman who had acquired right view, not because someone told her the truth, but because she had discovered it for herself in the crucible of her own suffering. This is the nature of right view. It is the compass that always points toward reality. It is the understanding that our actions have consequences, and the direct seeing of the transient, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of all things. It is the light that guides our every step on the path. We practice ethics because we understand karma, We practice mindfulness to see the three marks of existence more clearly. Right view gives meaning and direction to our entire spiritual life, transforming it from a hopeful guess into a confident journey. It is the first step and the constant companion on the road to freedom. With the guiding light of right view, we now have our map and our compass. We understand the landscape of suffering and the direction we need to travel. But a map is not the journey itself. To walk the path, we need a vehicle. We need a practical, tangible method to work with the mind, to tame its wildness, and to cultivate the clarity that right view points toward. This is where the path moves from the philosophical to the deeply personal. It begins with the most simple, most profound, and most accessible tool available to any human being: the breath. The practice is called anapanasati, which means, quite simply, mindfulness of breathing. In the storm of our relentless thinking, in the chaos of our emotional lives, the breath is our anchor. It is the calm, steady center in the hurricane of our experience. At first, this might sound too simple, almost disappointingly so. How can something as mundane as breathing lead to the cessation of suffering? The genius of this practice lies precisely in its simplicity. The Buddha chose the breath as the primary object of meditation for reasons that are both practical and profound. First, the breath is always with you. It requires no special equipment, no sacred location, no particular belief system. It is with you on the crowded bus, in the stressful office meeting, in the quiet of your bedroom at 3 a.m. From the moment of your birth to the moment of your death, the breath is your constant, faithful companion. You can never leave it behind. Therefore, your anchor is always within reach. Second, the breath is always in the present moment. You cannot take a breath that is in the past, nor can you take one that is in the future. To be aware of your breathing is, by definition, to be anchored in the here and now. Our suffering, as we have seen, is almost always rooted in time traveling. We suffer from replaying the painful events of the past or rehearsing anxious scenarios about the future. The breath gently but firmly pulls our scattered mind out of the phantoms of yesterday and tomorrow and brings it home to the only reality that ever truly exists, this present moment. Third, the breath is the bridge between the body and the mind, the conscious and the unconscious. Most of the time, breathing happens automatically, managed by the ancient, non-verbal parts of our brain. Yet, we can also take conscious control of it at any time. It is a mirror that reflects our inner state. When we are agitated or afraid, our breath is short and shallow. When we are calm and relaxed, our breath is slow and deep. But this is a two-way street. Just as the mind affects the breath can affect the mind. By consciously bringing a gentle awareness to our breathing, by allowing it to become calm and steady, we send a powerful signal back to our nervous system that we are safe, that we can relax. So how do we practice? The instructions are beautifully straightforward. First, find a posture that embodies both relaxation and dignity. You can sit on a chair with your feet flat on the floor or on a cushion on the ground. The key is to keep your back upright, not in a rigid, military stiffness, but in a way that allows for alertness and wakefulness. Let your hands rest comfortably in your lap and allow your eyes to gently close or to rest with a soft, unfocused gaze on the floor in front of you. Now, bring your attention to the physical sensation of the breath entering and leaving your body. There is no need to change it, to deepen it, or to force it in any way. Simply allow the breath to be as it is. Your only task is to feel it. You might choose to rest your awareness at the tip of the nostrils, feeling the cool air come in and the warm air go out. Or you might prefer to rest your attention on the rise and fall of your abdomen, like a gentle wave. Choose one spot and let that be your home base. Then, you simply observe. As you breathe in, make a quiet mental note, in. As you breathe out, a quiet mental note, out. Or, more fully, breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. You are not judging the breath. A short breath is not a failure. A long breath is not a success. They are simply what they are. You are becoming an impartial, compassionate scientist of your own inner experience. And now comes the most important instruction of all. Within a few seconds, or perhaps a minute, if you are lucky, your mind will wander. A thought will arise. What should I have for dinner? Did I remember to send that email? That person really annoyed me today. A sound will distract you. An itch will demand your attention. This is not a mistake. This is not a sign that you are a bad meditator. This is simply what minds do. The wandering of the mind is as natural as the beating of the heart. The practice is not about preventing the mind from wandering. The true practice, the moment of profound training, is the moment you notice that the mind has wandered. In that moment of noticing, you have woken up, and what you do next is everything. The untrained reaction is one of self-criticism. Oh, I can't do this. I'm no good at meditation. My mind is too busy. But the practice asks for something different. It asks for a gentle, forgiving kindness. Without any judgment or frustration, you simply acknowledge the thought. Let it go as if it were a cloud passing in the sky, and gently, patiently, guide your attention back to the feeling of the breath. Every time you do this, every time you notice the distraction and gently return, you are strengthening the muscle of mindfulness. You are performing a single rep of a sacred exercise. It is like training a small, playful puppy. You tell it to sit, and it immediately runs off to chase a butterfly. You don't get angry at the puppy. You just smile, gently pick it up, and place it back where you want it to be. You might have to do this 100 times in a 10-minute session. Those 100 returns are not 100 failures. They are 100 victories. They are the practice itself. The Buddha once told his monks a story. He said that when they go into the forest to meditate, a place that can be filled with frightening sounds and the threat of wild animals, they might experience fear, anxiety, or terror. When this happens, he told them, they should not run. They should not get lost in the stories of fear. They should immediately return to their original home, their ultimate refuge, the mindfulness of their own breath. He taught that by anchoring their attention in the simple reality of the in-breath and the out-breath, the fear would have nothing to cling to. The mind, which had been scattered and terrified, would become collected and calm. The breath would be their protector. This is what Anapanasati offers us. It is our refuge in the midst of daily life. When you feel overwhelmed by stress, you can take refuge in 3 conscious breaths. When you are about to react in anger, you can find a moment of peace and clarity in one single breath. When your mind is racing at night, you can find an anchor in the gentle rhythm of your breathing. This practice literally rewires the brain, weakening the neural pathways of reactivity and stress, and strengthening the pathways of calm, focus, and self-awareness. It creates a space between a stimulus and your response, and in that space lies your freedom. This is not a practice reserved for saints or monks in caves. It is your birthright. It is the most democratic tool for well-being imaginable. The breath does not care about your past, your wealth, or your beliefs. It is simply here, waiting for you to come home. It is the beginning of the path, and it is the end of the path. It is the simple, radical act of being present for your own life. one breath at a time. The practice of anchoring our awareness in the breath is the essential first step. It is the training ground, the gymnasium, where we go each day to strengthen the muscle of mindfulness. But the purpose of building strength in a gym is not to be strong only within those four walls. It is to carry that strength out into the world, into every step we take and every task we perform. In the same way, the purpose of formal, sitting meditation is not to be peaceful only on the cushion. It is to learn how to infuse our entire life with the calm, centered, and non-judgmental awareness that we cultivate in stillness. This is the practice of right mindfulness, samasati, in its fullest expression. It is the art of showing up for our own life. Most of us live our lives as if we are ghosts. Our bodies are in one place, but our minds are almost always somewhere else. Our consciousness has two favorite escape routes, two phantom realms where it prefers to dwell rather than in the raw, immediate reality of the present moment. The first realm is the past. The mind loves to wander through the vast museum of memory, sometimes lingering in the warm, golden light of nostalgia, replaying cherished moments. More often, however, it is drawn to the darker exhibits, the hall of regrets, the gallery of grievances, the wing of embarrassing moments. We walk these corridors endlessly, relitigating old arguments in our heads, rewriting scripts of what we should have said, feeling the fresh sting of old wounds. We become curators of our own pain, believing that by constantly revisiting the past, we can somehow change it. But all of this is a dream. The past is gone. It exists only as a flickering image in the mind, and our obsession with it prevents us from inhabiting the only life we actually have. The second escape route is the future. This is a boundless realm of fantasy, a world constructed entirely of what-ifs. We spend countless hours here, rehearsing for conversations that may never take place, meticulously planning for every possible catastrophe, or daydreaming about a future moment when all our problems will be solved and we can finally be happy. We live in a state of constant projection, pinning our hopes for peace on a future event. I'll be happy when I get that promotion. I can relax after this project is finished. My real life will begin once I find a partner. This future-oriented thinking is the very engine of anxiety. We are trying to control a reality that does not yet exist, draining our energy on possibilities rather than actualities. By constantly living for tomorrow, we ensure that we are never truly alive today. The practice of mindfulness in daily life is a gentle but radical rebellion against this ghostly existence. It is the simple, profound commitment to bringing our mind back home to our body, to unite them in the present moment. It means the artificial wall between meditation time and real life begins to dissolve. Every moment becomes an opportunity for practice. Every mundane task is transformed into a sacred ritual. Consider the act of walking. For most of us, walking is simply a way to get from point A to point B. While we walk, our mind is 1,000 miles away, lost in thought. A mindful walk is entirely different. You walk not to arrive, but just to walk. You bring your attention to the physical sensations of the act itself. Feel the subtle contact of your foot as it touches the ground, the heel, the ball of the foot, the toes. Feel the gentle shift of weight from one leg to the other. Notice the feeling of the air on your skin, the sounds of the world around you, the movement of your own body through space. You are not trying to get anywhere. You are already there, in each step. Or consider the act of eating. So often, we eat on autopilot, our attention fixed on a television screen, our phone, or the next task on our to-do list. We barely taste our food. To eat mindfully is to engage in a festival of the senses. Before you take a bite, look at your food. Notice its colors, its shapes, its textures. Bring it to your nose and smell its aroma. When you take a bite, chew slowly. Experience the taste fully, without the distraction of thought. Notice the intention to swallow. When you eat this way, you are not just consuming calories. You are deeply nourishing your body and mind. You are honoring the food and all the conditions that brought it to your plate. Perhaps the most famous example of this practice comes from the great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, who spoke of washing the dishes. He taught that if you are washing the dishes in order to get them done, so you can sit down and enjoy a cup of tea, then you are not really alive during the time you are washing the dishes. You are wishing your life away. Instead, he said, the purpose of washing the dishes is to wash the dishes. You stand at the sink and you are fully present. You feel the warmth of the water on your hands. You smell the clean scent of the soap. You see the iridescent sheen of the bubbles. You hear the sound of the water rinsing a plate. The task is no longer a chore to be rushed through, but a moment of quiet contemplation, a meditation in action. The tea will be waiting for you, and when you drink it, you will drink it with the same undivided attention. He told a beautiful story about eating a tangerine. He described how one could hold a small citrus fruit in the palm of their hand and, with mindfulness, see the entire universe within it. As you look at the tangerine, you can see the sun that warmed it, the clouds that brought it rain, the rich earth that nourished its roots. You can see the farmer who tended the tree, the blossom that preceded the fruit. You can see the entire web of causes and conditions, the miracle of interdependence that had to come together to create this single, perfect fruit in your hand. As you peel it, you do so slowly, mindfully, noticing the fragrant spray of oils from the skin. And when you place a section in your mouth, you taste it with your whole being, as if it were the most important event in the universe. In that moment, it is. By contrast, if you eat the tangerine while worrying about a work project, your body has ingested the fruit, but you have not experienced it. You have missed the miracle. This is the power of living in the present. It does not require you to change your life's activities. It only asks you to change the quality of your attention. You still go to work. You still wash the dishes. You still walk and eat. But you are no longer a sleepwalker. You are awake. The result of this practice is a life of incredible richness. The world, which once seemed grey and routine, becomes vibrant with color and texture. We discover that the joy we were seeking in the future was here all along, hidden in the fabric of the ordinary. The peace we were hoping for is not a destination to be reached, but the very ground on which we stand. If only we would have the courage to feel it beneath our feet. Life stops being a dress rehearsal for some future performance. This is it. The show is happening now, in this breath, in this step, in this very moment. Having learned to anchor ourselves in the present moment through the breath, and to carry that awareness into our daily lives, we now arrive at a deeper stage of mental cultivation. This is the practice of samma samadhi, or right concentration. If mindfulness is the act of being present, concentration is the art of staying present, of gathering our scattered awareness and unifying it into a calm, steady, and powerful force. This is where we learn to tame the proverbial monkey mind. This metaphor of the monkey mind is a classic Buddhist image for the state of our untrained consciousness. Imagine a wild monkey, agitated and restless, trapped inside a house. It cannot sit still for a moment. It screeches and gibbers, leaps from the window to the table, swings from the rafters, grabs one object, throws it down, and immediately scrambles for another. This is a perfect depiction of our ordinary mind. It leaps from a memory of the past to a worry about the future, from a physical sensation to a snatch of a song, from an angry thought to a pleasant daydream, all in a chaotic, exhausting, and uncontrollable frenzy. We are so accustomed to this inner noise that we often don't even notice it, accepting it as the normal state of being. But this constant agitation is a tremendous drain on our energy and the source of our deepest anxieties. The practice of concentration is the gentle, patient process of befriending this monkey, of calming its frantic energy and teaching it to rest. It is important to understand the relationship between mindfulness, sati, and concentration, samadhi. They are two wings of the same bird, and both are necessary for flight. Mindfulness is a broad, open, receptive awareness. It is like a wide-angle lens, taking in the whole scene of the present moment without getting lost in any one part. It is the part of our mind that says, "Ah, a thought has arisen," or "a sound is present," or "the breath is flowing in." Concentration, on the other hand, is like a zoom lens or a spotlight. It is the ability to take that awareness and place it, with intention, upon a single object, holding it steady and unwavering. They work as a team. When you are practicing concentration on the breath, it is mindfulness that notices when your attention has been pulled away by the monkey mind. It is mindfulness that recognizes, "Ah, the mind has wandered into planning dinner." Then, concentration is the faculty that gently but firmly releases the distraction and returns the spotlight of awareness back to the breath. Mindfulness provides the knowing. Concentration provides the stability. Without mindfulness, concentration can become a rigid, tense state. Without concentration, mindfulness remains weak and flickering, easily swept away by the next thought or sensation. Another powerful metaphor for this practice is that of a glass of water filled with mud. Our ordinary, agitated mind is like this glass of water being constantly shaken. The water, which represents our innate awareness, is fundamentally pure and clear, but the incessant shaking, the ceaseless internal chatter of the monkey mind, keeps the mud swirling. The water is so murky that we cannot see through it at all. This is our state of confusion and delusion. Now, if we want the water to become clear, what do? It would be foolish to try and force the mud out of the water while still shaking the glass. This is what many people mistakenly think meditation is: a forceful struggle to stop thinking. This approach only creates more tension and agitation, shaking the glass even more vigorously. The path of samadhi is far more gentle and wise. The instruction is simply to set the glass down. Stop shaking it. We don't fight the mud. We don't try to suppress the thoughts. We simply create the conditions for stillness. We sit, we relax the body, and we place our attention gently on a single, neutral object, such as the breath. By doing this, we stop feeding the mind's habit of agitation. And what happens? Naturally, on its own, without any forceful effort on our part, the mud begins to settle. The heavier particles of worry, planning, and obsessive thought begin to drift to the bottom. The water begins to clear. This process is not something we do. It is something we allow. The calm, clear water that remains is the state of a concentrated mind. The practice itself is a deepening of the mindfulness of breathing we have already explored. We settle into our posture and bring our attention to the breath. To strengthen the mind's ability to stay put, we might introduce a light anchor, such as counting. We might count 1 on the in-breath, 2 on the out-breath, all the way up to 10, and then begin again at 1. The numbers are not the point. They are simply a training wheel. They help us to notice more quickly the exact moment the mind has been hijacked by the monkey. When you find yourself at the number 15, or realize you are planning your vacation instead of counting, you have a clear sign that the mind has wandered. And, as always, the instruction is to meet this moment with kindness. You gently let go of the distraction and begin again at 1. The fruit of this practice is twofold. The first result is a profound and healing sense of calm, known as samatha. When the relentless internal chatter subsides, the mind experiences an incredible relief. It is like coming out of a deafeningly noisy factory into a quiet, peaceful garden. From this stillness, states of joy, contentment, and ease naturally arise. This is not a happiness that depends on getting something you want or an external pleasure. It is a deep well-being that emerges from the very nature of a calm and balanced mind. This is the beginning of discovering a source of happiness that is not contingent upon the ever-changing conditions of the world. But this peace, as wonderful as it is not the ultimate goal. It is the preparation for something even more profound. The second fruit of samadhi is the creation of a mind that is fit for the work of insight, or vipassana. Once the water in the glass is clear, you can finally see through it. Once the mind is calm, stable, and unified, it becomes a powerful instrument of investigation, like a high-powered microscope or a finely tuned telescope. With this concentrated mind, you can turn the spotlight of your attention onto the nature of experience itself. You can look at a feeling, a thought, or a sensation with an unprecedented clarity and stability. You can see for yourself how it arises, how it persists for a moment, and how it passes away. You can directly perceive the truth of impermanence. You can see that these experiences happen, but there is no solid, unchanging self at the center of them. This direct seeing, this clear insight born from a calm mind, is what liberates us. A scattered mind can only see the surface of things. A concentrated mind can penetrate reality to its very core. This is how true wisdom, or prajna, is born. Therefore, the taming of the monkey mind is not about creating a blank, empty state. It is about gathering our scattered energies and creating a mind that is both tranquil and sharp, both peaceful and capable. It is the essential middle step that connects our ethical way of living in the world with the liberating wisdom that sets us free. It provides the stable platform from which we can see things as they truly are. And in that seeing, find an end to suffering. We have learned to sit with the breath, to feel the anchor of the body, to notice the subtle currents of pleasant and unpleasant feelings that pass through us. This is like learning to read the weather of our own inner world. But what happens when the weather turns? When a storm gathers on the horizon of the mind? What do we do when the sky of our awareness is no longer clear and calm, but is filled with the thunder of anger, the chilling winds of fear, or the heavy grey clouds of sorrow? These are not just neutral sensations. They are powerful, demanding, and often quite unwelcome guests in the house of our mind. Our usual reaction is one of two extremes, both born of fear. We either try to fight the guest, to argue with it, to push it out the door, wrestling with our anger until we are exhausted. Or we pretend the guest isn't there. We lock the door to the room where our sadness sits. We distract ourselves with noise and busyness, hoping it will simply vanish if we ignore it long enough. But as we know, a guest that is fought only pushes back harder, and a guest that is ignored will only bang louder on the door, or worse, begin to rot the foundations of the house from within. There is a third way, a way of wisdom and compassion. a way that does not require us to fight or to flee, but simply to be present with courage and with kindness. The first and most liberating insight is this: your emotions are not you. We make a fundamental mistake in our language and in our perception that causes immense suffering. When the energy of anger arises, we do not say, "I am sensing anger in my awareness." We say, "I am angry." In that single, tiny word, am, we perform a tragic act of fusion. We take a temporary, passing, energetic event and mistake it for the entirety of our being. We become the storm, but you are not the storm. You are the sky. The sky does not become the thundercloud. It does not become the lightning flash. It does not become the pouring rain. The sky is the vast, open, boundless space in which all weather happens. Storms come, they rage, and eventually they pass. And through it all, the sky remains, unchanged, unstained, always present. Your awareness, that core of you that is able to know you are thinking, to know you are feeling, is the sky. The anger, the fear, the joy, the sadness, they are all just weather patterns passing through. When you can begin to see this, not just intellectually, but as a felt reality, the entire relationship with your inner world begins to shift. You no longer have to be the victim of your own emotional weather. You can become a wise, calm meteorologist of the mind, able to observe the conditions without being swept away by them. An emotion is simply energy in motion. It arises due to causes and conditions. It expresses itself as sensations in the body and thoughts in the mind. It peaks, and, if we allow it to, it will naturally fade away, returning its energy back to the great ocean of experience. The problem is, we don't allow it. We grab onto it. We identify with it. We feed it with stories, and we prolong its stay indefinitely. So, how do we practice this separation? How do we move from being the storm to being the sky? The practice is incredibly simple in its instruction, though it requires patience and consistency. It is the practice of naming or noting. When a strong emotion begins to arise, the first step is to recognize it, to intercept it with a moment of mindfulness before it completely hijacks your consciousness. As you feel that familiar heat rising in your chest, the clenching in your jaw, the rush of aggressive thoughts, you simply make a soft, gentle, mental note. Ah, anger. This is anger. You don't say, "I am angry." You say, "Anger is present." Or, "I am aware of the feeling of anger." That small shift in language is monumental. It immediately creates a space between the observer and the observed. You have just stepped out of the center of the storm and onto a small, stable island of awareness from which you can watch it. When you feel that cold knot in your stomach, that tightness in your throat, that frantic, catastrophic thinking, you note fear. This is what fear feels like. Or sadness. There is a feeling of sadness here. This act of naming is not an intellectual exercise. It is a powerful mindfulness tool. It does two things simultaneously. First, it validates the experience. It acknowledges what is true in the present moment, without judgment. You are not saying the anger is good or bad, right or wrong. You are simply saying, it is here. This is an act of honesty. Second, it shifts the activity in your brain. When you are lost in an emotion, your amygdala, the reactive, primitive part of your brain, is in full control. The simple, linguistic act of naming the emotion engages your prefrontal cortex, the more evolved, thinking part of your brain. You are bringing light into the darkness, consciousness into the automatic reaction. You are creating a pause, And in that pause lies your freedom. The freedom to not lash out in anger. The freedom to not be paralyzed by fear. The freedom to not drown in sorrow. You are simply watching the energy, feeling its texture in your body, noticing the thoughts it brings, all from the safe harbor of the observing sky. But observation is only the first half of the practice. The second half is where the true transformation occurs. It is the practice of acceptance and compassion. For this, we turn to one of the most powerful stories from the life of the Buddha. As he sat on the verge of enlightenment, he was visited by Mara, a figure who represents all of our inner obstacles, our deepest fears, our most powerful desires, our anger, our doubt, our despair. Mara came to stop the Buddha from awakening, using every weapon in his arsenal. He sent armies of demons. He conjured visions of beautiful temptresses. He whispered words of doubt and insecurity. Another person might have fought, run, or despaired. The Buddha did something radical. He didn't engage in battle. He didn't try to push Mara away. He simply looked at this terrifying figure and said, with complete calm, "I see you, Mara." This is the practice of naming. He acknowledged the reality of his own inner demons. Then, he did something even more profound. He said, "Come, let us have tea." He invited Mara to sit with him. This is the practice of acceptance, of embracing. He offered hospitality to his own deepest fears, and in that moment, Mara's power vanished. The armies disappeared. The temptations faded. Because Mara, like our own difficult emotions, thrives on being resisted. It feeds on our fear of it. Anger wants to be fought. Fear wants us to run. Sadness wants us to drown. When they are instead met with calm, non-judgmental, and even kind attention, they do not know what to do. Their fuel source has been cut off. By inviting Mara for tea, the Buddha demonstrated the ultimate spiritual strength. Not the power to defeat your enemies, but the courage to sit with them peacefully until they are no longer enemies. This is the path we must learn to walk with our own inner Mara. When anger comes to visit, our practice is to first say, "Ah, I see you, anger, I recognize you." And then, instead of slamming the door or starting a fight, we can learn to say, "Come in, sit for a while. I will not feed you with stories of blame and resentment. I will not act on your impulses, but I will not try to force you out. I will offer you the tea of my mindful, compassionate awareness." This is like a loving mother holding her crying child. The mother doesn't get angry at the child for crying. She doesn't tell it to suppress its feelings. She simply holds the child in her arms, rocking it gently, offering her calm, loving presence. Her presence doesn't magically stop the tears, but it creates a safe space in which the child's storm of emotion can run its course and find peace. We must learn to become this loving mother to ourselves. We can hold our own anger, our own fear, our own grief in the compassionate arms of our awareness, allowing it to be there without judgment until it naturally quiets down. This is how emotions are not suppressed, but transformed. They are composted, their raw, painful energy broken down and turned into the soil of wisdom and compassion. So the next time a difficult guest knocks on your door, the next time the storm clouds gather, remember the practice. First, see it, name it. "Ah, this is fear." Then, invite it in for tea. Greet it with the courage and kindness of the sky greeting a storm. You do not have to be afraid of yourself. You do not have to be at war with your own heart. By naming our guests, we create space. By greeting them with compassion, we disarm them. This is the art of working with difficult emotions, not as a struggle for control, but as a practice of profound peace and self-acceptance. We have seen how to handle the weeds of difficult emotions when they arise. But what if we could do more than just manage the weeds? What if we could actively cultivate a garden so beautiful and so vibrant that the weeds have less and less space to grow in the first place? This is the work of actively developing positive qualities, and it begins with the most powerful antidote to anger, resentment, and fear, the practice of growing a boundless heart through loving kindness. If the mind is a garden, we have learned how to skillfully and compassionately handle the weeds of anger and fear when they appear. This is a crucial skill for maintaining peace. But a gardener's work is not only to pull weeds. A truly beautiful garden is not simply one that is free of weeds, but one that is filled with vibrant, fragrant flowers, intentionally planted and carefully tended. Today, we learn the art of emotional cultivation. We learn to plant the most resilient and beautiful flower in the garden of the heart, the flower of metta, or loving kindness. Metta is the Pali word for a gentle, unconditional friendliness, a warm and benevolent goodwill that we can learn to extend to ourselves and to all living beings. It is the direct and powerful antidote to the states that cause us so much pain. Where anger burns, metta soothes. Where fear constricts, metta opens. Where resentment embitters, metta sweetens. It is the sun that can melt the ice that has formed around our hearts, allowing us to feel connected, safe, and at peace. Crucially, this practice of cultivating loving kindness begins in the soil of our own being. It begins with ourselves. For many of us, especially in a culture that often mistakes self-criticism for a virtue, this is the most difficult step. We may feel it is selfish or narcissistic, or that we don't deserve our own kindness. We are experts at finding our own flaws, replaying our mistakes, and speaking to ourselves with a harshness we would never dare use with a friend. But this practice teaches us a profound truth. You cannot pour from an empty cup. To try and offer genuine love and kindness to others when you are starving for it yourself is not sustainable. It often comes from a place of need, a desire to be loved in return, rather than from a place of genuine, overflowing generosity. A wise person tending to a village first ensures that their own well is not dry. Offering kindness to yourself is not an act of selfish indulgence. It is an act of fundamental wisdom and strength. It is recognizing that you, too, are a human being, struggling, trying your best, and worthy of the same compassion you would so readily offer to someone you love. It is the necessary foundation upon which all genuine love for others is built. The practice itself, often called metta bhavana, or the cultivation of loving kindness, is a structured and beautiful meditation that unfolds in stages, like a flower opening its petals one by one. It begins by finding a comfortable posture, closing your eyes, and bringing your awareness gently into the space of your own heart. Then, you begin the first stage, offering the gift of kindness to yourself. You silently repeat a series of simple, heartfelt phrases. The traditional phrases are, "May I be safe," "May I be healthy," "May I be happy," "May I live with ease." As you repeat them, you do not force any particular feeling. You simply offer the words as a gift. May I be safe, safe from inner and outer harm. May I be healthy, in body and in mind. May I be happy. May I find true and lasting well-being. And may I live with ease. May I be free from the burdens of stress, anxiety, and suffering. You let these words wash over you, planting seeds of gentleness in your own heart. Once a little warmth has been generated, you move to the second stage, You bring to mind a dear friend or a benefactor, someone for whom you feel easy and natural gratitude and affection. It could be a best friend, a parent, a child, even a beloved pet. You hold a clear image of them in your mind, and you now direct the same phrases of loving kindness towards them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. Notice how the feeling of metta often flows more easily when directed at someone we cherish. Let that feeling grow, that genuine wish for their well-being, and let it fill your heart. The third stage expands the circle. Here, you bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone you see in your daily life, but have no strong feelings about, either positive or negative. It might be the cashier at the grocery store, the mail carrier, a person you see on your commute. You hold their image in your mind, and you extend the very same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. This stage is so important because it begins to break down the barriers of indifference. It trains the heart to see the humanity in everyone, not just those within our immediate circle of care. It is a powerful practice in overcoming the subtle bias that separates our world into us and them. The fourth stage is the most challenging and perhaps the most transformative. You are invited to bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom you have conflict, friction, or resentment. The instruction here is very precise. You are not being asked to condone their harmful actions, nor are you being asked to force a feeling of warm affection. The practice is for your own benefit, to free your own heart from the poison of hatred. Holding this person in your awareness, you try, as best as you can, to wish them well on a basic human level, recognizing that their harmful actions likely come from their own deep suffering. May you too find peace. May your heart be free from anger. May you be happy. It is a radical act to wish happiness upon someone who has hurt you, but in doing so, you are the primary beneficiary. You release the heavy, burning stone of resentment that you have been carrying. Finally, in the fifth stage, you let the feeling of loving kindness become boundless. You extend it outwards from your heart in all directions. First to everyone in the room with you, then the building, the city, the country, then to all beings on the planet, all the animals, all the creatures in the sea and in the sky. To all beings, near and far, seen and unseen, large and small, you hold the entire world in your compassionate embrace, repeating the phrase, "May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings live with ease." You rest in this state of boundless, impartial goodwill, a lighthouse of kindness shining out in all directions. This practice reveals that metta is not simply a romantic emotion or a sentimental mood. It is a steady and resolute intention of the heart. It is the unwavering will for the well-being of others, independent of whether we like them or not. There is a beautiful story that illustrates this power. A group of monks went to meditate in a beautiful but remote forest. Soon after they arrived, they found themselves tormented by the tree spirits native to the area, who made frightening noises and created terrifying apparitions. The monks became filled with fear and could not concentrate. So they fled the forest and went to the Buddha for help. The Buddha did not give them a weapon or a magic amulet. He gave them the practice of metta. He taught them a powerful sermon, the Karanya Metta Sutta, instructing them to cultivate a heart of boundless loving kindness, a heart as protective and vast as that of a mother watching over her only precious child. He told them to return to the forest and radiate this energy. The monks did as they were told. They sat beneath the same trees, but this time Instead of being filled with fear, their hearts were overflowing with a powerful, silent wish for the well-being of all, including the very spirits who had tormented them. The spirits, soothed and moved by this immense wave of pure goodwill, became calm. Their hostility vanished, and they not only left the monks in peace, but began to actively protect them. The frightening forest was transformed into a safe and supportive haven, not by fighting the danger, but by dissolving it with love. This is the power we cultivate in our own hearts. Metta is our shield. It is a gentle but unbreakable strength. When we practice, we are not being passive or weak. We are actively creating the causes and conditions for peace, both within ourselves and in the world around us. We are becoming gardeners of the heart, choosing to cultivate the beautiful flower of kindness, making our inner world a refuge of warmth and safety. Having opened our hearts in this way, we create a new kind of resilience, a softness that allows us to face difficult truths without shattering. An open heart is better prepared for deep seeing. And so, with this newfound warmth, we can now turn our attention to one of the most profound and liberating insights of this path, the wisdom that understands the fluid, changing, and ephemeral nature of all reality. We turn to the truth of impermanence, with a heart made more spacious and tender through the practice of loving kindness. We are better prepared to look deeply into the nature of reality itself. An open heart can bear the weight of profound truths without shattering, and there is perhaps no truth more fundamental, more pervasive, and more essential for our liberation than the truth of anicca, or impermanence. Look around you. Look within you. Everything you can see, touch, and feel is subject to one unwavering law, the law of change. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus famously said that you cannot step into the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and you are not the same person. This is the essence of anicca. Life is not a series of static objects and fixed events. It is a flowing, dynamic, unstoppable river. The body you have today is not the body you had 7 years ago, for nearly every cell has been replaced. The thoughts you are thinking now did not exist a moment ago and will vanish in the next. The world outside your window is in a constant, subtle dance of becoming and unbecoming. This is the fundamental nature of existence. And yet, we spend most of our lives acting as if this weren't true. We try to build solid, permanent houses for ourselves right in the middle of this flowing river. And we wonder why we are constantly exhausted, anxious, and disappointed. Our suffering does not arise from the fact of change itself. Change is neutral. It is simply the way things are. The rain is not suffering. The wind is not suffering. A flower wilting is not suffering. The suffering is a uniquely human invention, and it arises from one single source, our resistance to the flow. This resistance takes two primary forms. The first is clinging. When we experience something pleasant, a moment of joy, a feeling of love, a state of perfect health, or a professional success, our immediate instinct is to grasp it. We try to freeze the moment, to make it permanent. We build a fortress of attachment around our happiness, hoping to protect it from the river of time. But the river always wins. The perfect moment fades, health declines, relationships evolve, success wanes. And because we have clung so tightly, the process of it being swept away feels like our own skin is being torn off. The pain of loss is directly proportional to the intensity of our clinging. We are not saddened by the simple passing of a pleasant experience. We are tortured by our failed attempt to make it eternal. The second form of resistance is aversion. When we experience something unpleasant, a physical pain, A difficult emotion, like grief or shame, a failure or a rejection, our instinct is to push it away. We declare war on our own present moment reality. We fight it, we deny it, we numb ourselves to it, doing everything in our power to not feel what we are feeling. This struggle against what is already here creates immense tension and suffering. The initial unpleasant event is the first arrow, as the Buddha taught. It is painful, but often unavoidable. Our resistance, our desperate pushing away, our story about how this shouldn't be happening, is the second arrow, the one we shoot into ourselves. It is this second arrow that turns simple pain into prolonged suffering. Both clinging and aversion are born from the same fundamental misunderstanding, the belief that we can and should be able to control the uncontrollable flow of life, holding on to what we like and banishing what we don't. This is an exhausting and impossible battle against reality itself. The practice, then, is not to somehow stop change, but to learn to flow with it, to align ourselves with reality as it is. We do this through the gentle and consistent contemplation of impermanence. This is not a morbid or pessimistic exercise. It is a deeply liberating one. In our meditation, we can watch this truth unfold moment by moment. We feel the breath as it is born, lives for a moment, and then dissolves, followed by a space, and then a new breath. Each breath is a mini lesson in birth and death. We can watch thoughts and feelings bubble up into our awareness, seemingly from nowhere, stay for a short time, and then vanish, like clouds passing through the vast sky of the mind. This is anicca in real time. We can also practice in our daily lives, simply by noticing. Notice the steam rising from a cup of tea and disappearing into the air. Notice the way sunlight moves across the floor during the day. Notice the cycle of a flower in a vase, from fresh bud to wilting petal. Notice the constant flux of your own body, the tiny aches and pains that come and go, the healing of a small cut, the shifting of energy from morning to night. There is a beautiful story of a Zen master who had a favorite teacup. It was exquisite, and he cherished it. He often told his students, "For me, this cup is already broken." He used it every day, cared for it, and enjoyed its beauty. But in his mind, he had fully accepted its inevitable end. He lived with the truth of its impermanence. One day, a student accidentally knocked the cup from a shelf, and it shattered into 100 pieces. The student was terrified, but the master remained perfectly calm. He looked at the pieces on the floor and said simply, "Of course." The students were astonished by his lack of distress. He explained to them, "I have been enjoying the cup while knowing it was already broken. Its breaking was not a tragedy, but simply the fulfillment of its own nature. It has now returned to the universe." This story holds a profound wisdom. When you understand that everything is already broken, you become free to love it more completely and purely, right here and now. You are not loving the anxious idea of its permanence. You are loving its precious, fleeting, and vibrant reality. This practice does not numb you to loss. It awakens you to the poignant beauty of the present moment, reducing the fear and anxiety that comes from clinging. Finally, we must reframe our entire view of impermanence. Our culture often treats it as a tragedy. We fight aging. We mourn endings. We fear decay. But what if impermanence is actually the greatest gift? What if change is another word for hope? If things were permanent, no wound could ever heal. No argument could ever be resolved. A state of sadness would be a life sentence. A mistake would stain you forever. A tyrant would rule for eternity. Nothing could grow, nothing could evolve, nothing could be learned. It is the law of anicca that allows for all renewal, all forgiveness, all growth, and all healing. The end of a painful chapter is what makes the beginning of a new one possible. The fact that a bad mood will pass gives us the strength to endure it. The knowledge that we are not fixed, static beings gives us the courage to change our habits and our lives. Impermanence is not a curse. It is the doorway to freedom and possibility. It is the universe's guarantee that nothing, good or bad, lasts forever, and this understanding is a source of profound peace. By learning to see the truth of anicca, we learn the graceful art of letting go. We stop fighting the river and learn to swim with the current. We stop clinging to the waves and learn to surf them with balance and skill. This is the path to an unshakable peace, one that is not dependent on circumstances being a certain way. But this exploration raises a deeper, more personal question. We have seen that our bodies are impermanent, our feelings are impermanent, our thoughts are impermanent, our relationships and possessions are impermanent. Everything we identify with is in constant flux. So, what about the identifier? What is this I that seems to be at the center of this whirlwind of change? Is there a permanent, unchanging soul, a solid self that owns these experiences? Or is the observer itself also part of the flow? This inquiry takes us to the very heart of the Buddha's teaching, into the deep and liberating waters of anatta, the wisdom of no self. We have journeyed through the flowing river of reality, learning to see the truth of impermanence, or anicca, in every aspect of our experience. We have watched our thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations arise and pass away like clouds in the sky. This naturally leads to the deepest and most profound question of all. If everything is in constant flux, who, exactly, is this I that is doing the watching? We have a powerful, deeply ingrained intuition that there is a permanent, unchanging self at the center of our being, a thinker behind the thoughts, a feeler behind the feelings, a stable entity that remains the same throughout the constant changes of our life. We feel like the solid, unchanging CEO, sitting in the headquarters of the mind, managing the chaotic business of living. But the wisdom of this path invites us to do something radical, to turn our awareness around and look for this CEO. When we do, we make a startling discovery. There is no one home. This is the teaching of anatta, often translated as no self or not self. It does not mean that you do not exist. You are clearly sitting here, breathing and hearing these words. Rather, it points to the fact that you do not exist as a separate, solid, independent entity. What we call ourself is not a thing, but a process, a dynamic and interconnected event. To make this clear, Buddhist psychology provides a beautifully simple model. It suggests that what we call a person is actually the coming together of 5 distinct processes, known as the 5 aggregates or skandhas. Let us look for ourself in these 5 areas. The first aggregate is form. This is your physical body, the flesh, bones, organs, and breath. We have already seen clearly that the body is impermanent. It is constantly changing, aging, getting sick, getting well. Is this body truly me? If you lose a limb, are you less of a self? When your cells are replaced, is it a new self? We care for the body, but it is ultimately a temporary vessel, a collection of elements borrowed from the earth. We cannot find a permanent I here. The second aggregate is feeling. This refers to the raw sensations that arise whenever our senses make contact with the world. They are categorized as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. A pleasant feeling from the warmth of the sun, an unpleasant feeling of a headache, a neutral feeling of your feet on the floor. These feelings are like bubbles on the surface of water, arising and vanishing in an instant. They are fleeting, impersonal events. Is the momentary pleasure of a sweet taste the real me? Surely not. The third aggregate is perception. This is the mental function that recognizes, identifies, and labels our experience. It's the part of the mind that sees a collection of green and brown and says tree, or hears a vibration and calls it music. This process is entirely dependent on memory, culture, and past conditioning. It is a flickering, interpretive process. Is the label tree the real, essential me? Of course not. The fourth aggregate is mental formations. This is a very broad category that includes all of our volitional activities, our thoughts, habits, opinions, beliefs, desires, and intentions. This is the chattering, planning, worrying mind. This is where we most often believe ourself resides. But look closely. Are your opinions the same as they were 10 years ago? Do your desires not change from moment to moment? Is a fleeting, angry thought the real you? These mental events are the most chaotic and impermanent aspect of our experience. Like sparks from a fire, constantly flaring up and dying out. We cannot find a stable, unchanging I here either. The fifth and final aggregate is consciousness. This is the basic faculty of knowing, the raw awareness that arises through our six sense doors, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. But this consciousness is not a single, monolithic spotlight. It is a series of discrete moments of knowing, completely dependent on an organ and its object. There is eye consciousness, which arises when the eye meets a form. There is ear consciousness, which arises when the ear meets a sound. It is not a continuous entity, but a flickering process that arises and ceases with each moment of contact. After searching through all five of these heaps, these aggregates that constitute our entire known experience, we are left with a profound conclusion. We cannot find a separate owner, a central controller, a permanent self anywhere. The self is like a rainbow. A rainbow is a beautiful phenomenon that appears when sunlight and water droplets combine in a specific way. But if you go looking for the rainbow, you will never find it. It has no independent existence. Similarly, the self is a phenomenon that appears when these five processes of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness come together in a specific way. There is a famous dialogue that makes this perfectly clear. The enlightened monk Nagasena was approached by the powerful king, Milinda. The king, a sharp intellectual, asked Nagasena for his name. Nagasena replied that he was known as Nagasena, but that this was merely a name, a convenient designation, and that no permanent person could be found. The king was incredulous. If there is no person, he challenged, then who is it that wears these robes and eats this food? Nagasena, a masterful teacher, responded not with a lecture, but with a question. Your Majesty, how did you arrive here today? By foot or in a chariot? The king, proud of his royal transport, replied, in a chariot. Excellent, said Nagasena. Please, define chariot for me. Is the chariot the wheels? No, said the king. Is it the axle, the frame, the reins? To each question, the king replied. Number Nagasena then asked, so, is the chariot all of these parts combined into one? The king had to admit, no, that's not it either. Then is the chariot something separate from all of these parts? No, the king conceded. Nagasena then smiled and delivered his point. Your Majesty, you have said it yourself. Chariot is simply the name we give, a convenient label, for a collection of parts assembled in a specific way. In exactly the same way, Nagasena is just a convenient name for the temporary collection of the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. When the ego first hears this teaching of no self, its reaction is often one of fear. It sounds like annihilation, a cold and nihilistic void. But this is a profound misunderstanding. The discovery of anatta is not the end of life. It is the end of a prison sentence. The belief in a separate, solid self is the root cause of most of our deepest suffering. It is this fragile I that we must constantly defend, promote, and worry about. It is this I that feels slighted by criticism, puffed up by praise, and terrified of failure. It is this belief in a solid me that automatically creates a solid you, setting the stage for all conflict, jealousy, prejudice, and greed. And most of all, it is the belief in a permanent self that creates our profound terror of death, which we see as the ultimate extinction of this precious I. Understanding anatta is the ultimate liberation. When you see that the self is an illusion, a process, you stop taking everything so personally. An insult is just passing sound waves and a fleeting, unpleasant feeling. It is not an attack on your core being. Praise is just a pleasant sensation, not a confirmation of your inherent worth. A heavy weight is lifted from your shoulders. The frantic need to protect and enhance the ego begins to soften, and in its place, something beautiful arises. When the hard walls of me become porous, compassion for others flows naturally. We see that we are all interconnected processes, waves in the same ocean of existence. Your suffering is my suffering. Your joy is my joy. The fear of death also transforms. If there was no solid, separate thing there to begin with, what is there to die? There is only the dissolution of a temporary pattern, a wave gracefully returning to the ocean. The water was never lost. Having seen through the illusion of the self, we can now look at the world with new eyes. If there is no permanent me to satisfy, what does that mean for our frantic pursuit of things? How does this wisdom change our relationship to the material world we work so hard to conquer? We have taken a courageous look inward, seeing the truth that all things, including our thoughts and feelings, are impermanent, a flowing river of change. We have searched for a solid, separate self at the center of this flow and have found none, realizing that the I we cherish is more like a process than a permanent entity. This wisdom is not an abstract philosophy. It is a practical tool that fundamentally changes how we relate to the world. Now, we bring this profound insight to bear on one of the most powerful and pervasive forces in our modern lives, the relentless pressure of materialism. If everything is impermanent, why do we exhaust ourselves accumulating things that will inevitably break, decay, and turn to dust? If there is no solid, separate self to aggrandize, who exactly are we trying to impress with the things we own? Our modern world is built upon a single, powerful promise. A promise whispered to us from thousands of advertisements every single day. The promise is that happiness is something you can buy. It tells us that we are fundamentally incomplete, that there is a hole in our being, and that this hole can be filled by the next purchase. A new phone will make you feel connected. A luxury car will make you feel respected. A fashionable outfit will make you feel desirable. A bigger house will make you feel secure. We are taught to seek our well-being and our identity on store shelves and in online shopping carts. But the wisdom of this path asks us to look closely at the actual results of this promise. Does it deliver on its word? The truth is, it delivers the exact opposite. Materialism promises happiness, but it creates a unique, and pervasive form of suffering. This suffering has two main phases. First, there is the anxiety of acquisition. This is the stress of working longer hours to afford things we don't truly need. It is the pressure of debt, the constant, low-grade fever of comparing our possessions to those of our neighbors and feeling that we are falling behind. It is the frantic chase, the belief that if only I had that one more thing, then I would be content. But this is a horizon that recedes as we approach it. This state of constant wanting, known as tanha in Buddhist thought, is the very definition of dissatisfaction. Then, if we succeed in acquiring the object of our desire, we enter the second phase, the anxiety of possession. The thing we thought would bring us freedom now becomes a burden. We worry about our new car getting scratched, our new phone getting stolen, our new house needing repairs. The possessions begin to possess us. We must insure them, protect them, clean them, and maintain them. Our mental space, which could be used for creativity, connection, and peace, becomes cluttered with the management of our stuff. And even worse, the initial pleasure of the new object inevitably fades. This is anicca, impermanence, inaction. The novelty wears off, the thrill subsides, and the wanting mind, the hungry ghost, immediately begins to look for its next meal. This is the hedonic treadmill, a game that is ingeniously designed so that we can never win. Its goal is not our contentment. Its goal is our continued participation. The antidote to this exhausting game is a radical and liberating practice known as contentment, or knowing what is enough. This does not mean embracing a life of harsh, joyless asceticism. The Buddha's path is the middle way, avoiding the extremes of both sensual indulgence and severe self-denial. The point is not that owning things is inherently evil. The point is that seeking your fundamental happiness in them is a profound mistake. Simplicity is not about deprivation. It is about clarity. It is the conscious and joyful act of distinguishing between what you truly need to live a dignified and healthy life and the endless desires manufactured by a consumer culture. It is the realization that the qualities we are all truly seeking, such as peace, love, security, and connection, are qualities of the heart and mind. They cannot be imported from the outside. They must be cultivated from within. There is a simple story that illuminates this principle beautifully. A wandering monk lived a life of ultimate simplicity. His only possessions were 3 robes to wear, a needle and thread, a water filter, and a single bowl, which he used for both eating his daily meal and for drinking water. He felt he had everything he needed and was perfectly content. One afternoon, he went to a stream to drink. As he was about to dip his treasured bowl into the water, he saw a peasant woman who was also thirsty. She simply knelt down, cupped her hands together, and drank the cool, clear water directly from the stream. In that instant, the monk had a flash of profound insight. He looked at the bowl in his hand and realized it was a luxury. It was an unnecessary possession. He placed the bowl on the riverbank for the next traveler to find and use if they needed it. Then he stood up and walked away, not feeling that he had lost something, but feeling even lighter, even more unburdened, even more free. The moral is clear. True wealth is not found in the accumulation of many things, but in the cultivation of few wants. Freedom is not adding more to our lives, but gracefully subtracting that which is not essential. When we dare to step off the treadmill, when we begin to practice this intentional simplicity, we are given the gift of freedom in its most practical forms. We are given the freedom of time. We spend less of our precious life energy working to pay for things that don't bring lasting joy. We spend less of our weekends cleaning, organizing, and maintaining a mountain of possessions. We are also given the freedom of energy. A vast amount of mental bandwidth is liberated when we are no longer consumed by desire for new things, worry about our current things, or envy of other people's things. Our minds become less cluttered, more spacious, and more calm. And most importantly, this freed up time and energy can now be invested in what truly nourishes the human spirit. We have more space for inner growth, for the practices of mindfulness and compassion that we have been exploring. We have more time and, crucially, more presence for our relationships. We can offer our partners, our children, and our friends our undivided attention, which is the most valuable gift of all. We begin to shift our life's focus from a strategy of having to a way of being. We find that the deep and lasting joy we were seeking all along is not in a shopping mall, but in a quiet walk in nature, a heartfelt conversation with a loved one, the creative act of making something with our hands, or the simple peace of a quiet mind. Confronting our own materialism through the lens of impermanence and no-self is one of the most profound acts of self-care we can perform. It is a declaration of independence from a system that feeds on our anxiety. Simplicity is the elegant and direct path to a life of deeper meaning, greater peace, and more authentic freedom. Our lives are expressed not only through what we own, but through how we act. And one of the most immediate ways we interact with the world is through the words we speak. Our speech is a powerful mirror of our inner state, and a powerful tool that can create either harmony or suffering. This brings us to the next step on our path, the deep practice of right speech. We have seen how wisdom can untangle our relationship with the world of things, freeing us from the exhausting chase of materialism. Now we turn our attention from the objects we possess to the words we produce. Of all the tools we have for interacting with the world, speech is perhaps the most powerful and the most frequently used. Words are not merely sounds we make, they are potent forces. With our words, we can build a bridge of connection to another person, or we can erect a wall of separation. We can offer a balm that heals a wounded spirit, or we can wield a weapon that inflicts a wound of its own. A single kind word can change someone's entire day, while a single cruel one can echo in their mind for years. In our modern world, drowning in a constant flood of noise, opinions, and chatter, the ancient practice of right speech, or samavaka, is more essential than ever. It is not a rigid rule of censorship, but a profound practice of bringing mindfulness and compassion into every word we utter. To guide us in this practice, the Buddha offered a simple yet brilliant framework, often envisioned as 4 gates through which our speech must pass before it should be expressed. Before you speak, you pause and ask your words to pass through these 4 checkpoints. The first gate is it true? This seems obvious, yet it is a deeply challenging practice. It means more than simply not telling outright lies. It means committing ourselves to accuracy and abandoning exaggeration, distortion, and the spreading of rumors. In our age of social media, where misinformation can spread across the globe in an instant, this first gate is a powerful practice of personal integrity. It asks us, am I sharing this because I know it to be factual, or simply because it confirms my biases, or is emotionally compelling? Passing through this gate means we learn to value truth more than we value being interesting, provocative, or accepted by our group. If the words are true, they must then pass through the second gate. Is it beneficial, or is it not divisive? This gate examines our intention. Just because something is true does not always mean it is helpful to say it. We can often use the truth as a subtle weapon, pointing out another's flaw for their own good, when our real, unexamined intention is to elevate ourselves by putting them down. This gate asks us to consider the impact of our words. Will this statement create harmony or discord? Will it build connection, or will it sow resentment and division? It encourages us to find skillful ways to communicate difficult truths, ways that seek to mend and unite, rather than to separate and conquer. Assuming a statement is both true and beneficial, it must approach the third gate. Is it kind, or is it not harsh? This gate is concerned with the tone and texture of our speech. The same truth can be delivered with the sharp edge of a razor or the soft touch of a feather. This gate is the guardian against sarcasm, mockery, yelling, name-calling, and all forms of verbal aggression. It reminds us to choose words that are gentle, respectful, and considerate. Even in a disagreement, we can choose to address the issue at hand without attacking the person. This is the practice of wrapping our truth in kindness, making it far more likely that it will be truly received by the other person. Finally, if our words are true, beneficial, and kind, they arrive at the fourth and final gate. Is it necessary? This is the gate of noble silence. Our world is full of noise, and we often feel an anxious compulsion to fill every available silence with chatter. This gate challenges that compulsion. It asks, does this really need to be said? Does it add anything of value to the space? This is the powerful antidote to mindless gossip, chronic complaining, and speaking just to hear our own voice. By practicing with this gate, our speech becomes more intentional and, therefore, more potent. We learn the beauty of silence, and when we do choose to speak, our words carry more weight and meaning because they are no longer lost in a sea of triviality. This practice of the four gates is a vital form of mindfulness for our digital lives. The anonymity and distance of the internet can create a space where our most unskillful speech habits run wild. We type comments we would never dream of saying to someone's face. Before posting, sharing, or commenting, we can pause and run our words through the gates. Is this post true, or have I fact-checked it? Is my comment intended to be helpful, or is it just adding to an online mob? Is my language kind, or am I hiding behind my keyboard to be cruel? And is it truly necessary for me to add my opinion to this particular storm? Every single online interaction is an opportunity to practice this profound form of mental and ethical discipline. Furthermore, the practice of right speech is not only about what we say, it is also about we spend a vast portion of our lives at work. For many, this is a simple fact of survival, but it often comes at a great cost. The workplace can be a theater of stress, competition, and a gnawing sense of meaninglessness. A part of our life we must endure in order to enjoy the few hours that are left. We often create a sharp division, seeing our spiritual life, our quest for peace, as something we do on the side, in the evenings, or on weekends, completely separate from the person we are from 9 to 5. The teaching of right livelihood, or Sama Ajiva, challenges this division. It invites us to see our work not as an obstacle to our spiritual path, but as a central and vital part of it. It is the arena where our ethics are tested most directly, where our mindfulness can be applied most practically, and where our potential to contribute to the world is most tangible. It asks a simple, profound question. Can the way we earn our living be a source of peace rather than a source of stress for both ourselves and for others? The foundation of right livelihood is the principle of ahimsa, or non-harming. The first step is to examine our work and see if it causes direct and intentional harm in the world. Traditionally, the Buddha pointed to 5 types of commerce that should be avoided. First, dealing in weapons. as this directly facilitates violence and death. Second, dealing in living beings, which includes human trafficking and slavery, but also the business of raising animals for slaughter, as it treats life as a mere commodity. Third, the trade in meat, which is the direct result of killing. Fourth, dealing in poisons or any substance created with the intention to destroy life. And fifth, the trade in intoxicants, such as alcohol or drugs, which cloud the mind, lead to heedlessness, and cause immense suffering for individuals and families. This ancient list is not meant to be a rigid set of prohibitions, but rather a guide for ethical reflection. The timeless principle underlying it all is, does my work, at its core, contribute to the suffering of beings or to their well-being? To make this clear, imagine two successful merchants. The first is an arms dealer. Their business is to sell weapons, which are then used in conflicts that cause unimaginable pain, loss, and devastation. This merchant may become very wealthy. They may live in a beautiful house and enjoy all the luxuries of the material world, but their fortune is built upon a foundation of tears and blood. Can their mind ever be truly at peace? Can they sleep soundly at night, knowing the direct consequences of their livelihood? Their work actively plants seeds of violence, fear, and sorrow in the world. And by the inescapable law of cause and effect, these seeds will also sprout in the garden of their own mind. Now imagine a second merchant. This person is a doctor, or a therapist, or a teacher. Their life's work is dedicated to alleviating suffering, to healing broken bodies and minds, to nurturing the potential in others. They too may earn a comfortable living, but their wealth is a byproduct of their service, a token of gratitude for the good they have created. Their work actively plants seeds of healing, compassion, and wisdom in the world. The very nature of their profession aligns with their deepest human values, creating a sense of purpose and integrity that is worth more than any amount of money. The peace they feel is not something they have to seek outside of their work. It is woven into the very fabric of it. This comparison is not meant to create judgment, but to illustrate a simple truth. Our work is one of the most powerful karmic forces in our lives. A livelihood founded on causing harm will inevitably poison our own well of inner peace. A livelihood founded on helping will continuously nourish it. However, the practice of right livelihood is not just for those with obviously noble professions. Most of us work in fields that are not so black and white. We are office workers, drivers, artists, programmers, cashiers. The true challenge and beauty of this practice is learning to transform whatever work we do into a path of mindfulness and purpose. It is about the intention we bring to our labor, not just the labor itself. You can begin this transformation by practicing mindfulness of action. Whatever your task is, whether it is typing an email, stocking a shelf, or driving a bus, can you do it with your full attention? Can you feel the sensation of your fingers on the keyboard, the weight of the object in your hands, the feeling of the steering wheel beneath your palms? When we bring our full presence to our tasks, we pull our minds out of the anxious inner world of worrying, planning, and daydreaming, and we ground ourselves in the reality of the present moment. The work itself, no matter how mundane, becomes a form of meditation. This reduces stress, improves the quality of our work, and brings a sense of calm dignity to our day. Next, we can make our workplace a training ground for right speech. We can consciously decide to step away from the culture of office gossip, cynical complaining, and passive aggression. We can practice speaking to our colleagues and clients with kindness and respect, using the 4 gates we have already explored. We can listen deeply to their concerns, communicate our own needs clearly and truthfully, and aim to create an atmosphere of harmony and mutual support rather than one of competition and distrust. By doing this, we can single-handedly change the emotional temperature of our work environment. Finally, we can infuse our work with compassion and a sense of purpose by shifting our intention. We can learn to see our customers, clients, and co-workers not as obstacles or tools for our own advancement, but as fellow human beings, each with their own struggles and their own desire for happiness. We can then ask ourselves, how can my work today, in some small way, reduce suffering or create well-being for others? A janitor is not just mopping a floor, they are creating a clean, safe, and pleasant environment for people to work in. An IT support person is not just fixing a computer, they are relieving someone's frustration and allowing them to connect with the world. By connecting our small daily tasks to a larger, benevolent purpose, we give our work a profound sense of meaning. Right livelihood, then, is not about finding the perfect, stress-free job. Such a thing may not exist. It is about bringing the perfect intention to the job we have. It is the recognition that the hours we spend laboring are not a break from our spiritual life. They are a crucible in which our practice is forged. By consciously choosing to cause no harm, and by actively infusing our daily work with mindfulness, integrity, and a compassionate intention, we transform our job from a source of dread into a path with heart, a path of purpose, and a meaningful contribution to the intricate web of life. We have now examined how we act in the world through our possessions, our words, and our work. Let us now turn our attention back inward to the subtle, powerful mechanism that governs all of these actions, the precious, fleeting space that exists between a stimulus and our response. For it is in this tiny gap that our true freedom lies. We have explored the path of our external actions, examining how to bring wisdom to our relationship with possessions, our words, and our work. These are the fruits of our practice, the visible expression of our inner cultivation. Now, we return our attention inward to the very engine room of our experience, to the subtle, lightning-fast mechanism that determines the quality of everything we do and say. We are going to explore the space between what happens to us and how we react to it. For in that tiny, precious gap lies the entirety of our freedom, our growth, and our peace. For most of our lives, we operate on a kind of automatic pilot. An event occurs, a stimulus from the outside world, and before we are even consciously aware of it, a reaction has already taken place. Someone cuts us off in traffic, and instantly, a surge of anger courses through our veins, and a curse forms on our lips. We receive an email with a hint of criticism, and in a flash, our stomach clenches with anxiety, and our mind begins formulating a defensive reply. We hear a piece of bad news, and immediately, we are plunged into despair. This is a stimulus-response circuit, a mechanical and deeply conditioned way of living. It is a life lived in chains, where we are not the masters of our own inner house, but merely puppets jerked around by the strings of external events and our own ingrained habits. We believe we are suffering because of the traffic, the email, or the news, but the deeper truth is that we are suffering because of our own instantaneous, unthinking reactions. To truly understand this, we must revisit the profound parable of the two arrows. The first arrow is the unavoidable pain of life itself. In the course of a human life, there will be sickness, loss, disappointment, and moments of physical and emotional pain. The car will cut you off. The email will be critical. People we love will leave us. Our bodies will age. These are the first arrows. They are shot by the world, and they are largely outside of our control. To live is to be vulnerable to these arrows. The real tragedy, and the source of the vast majority of our human misery, lies in the second arrow, and then the third, and the fourth. The second arrow is the one we shoot into ourselves. It is our reaction to the first. It is the story we spin, the judgment we cast, the torrent of negative emotion we unleash in response to the initial pain. The first arrow is the physical sensation of a stubbed toe. The second arrow is the explosion of anger, the self-recrimination. How could I be so stupid? The blaming of the chair, the drama that turns a moment of simple pain into 10 minutes of fuming and suffering. The first arrow is the brief, unpleasant feeling of being criticized. The second arrow is the mental firestorm that follows. My boss hates me. I'm going to get fired. I'm a failure. My life is ruined. It is this second arrow of our own reaction that turns a wound into a festering infection. We are the archers of our own greatest suffering. So, how do we learn to stop shooting ourselves with these second arrows? The answer is not to develop thicker skin or to become emotionless. The answer lies in cultivating the power of the pause. This sacred pause, this space between stimulus and response, is the greatest gift of mindfulness practice. Everything we have learned so far, the patient attention to the breath, the gentle scanning of the body, the non-judgmental observation of our feelings, has been training for this. This practice develops a kind of inner sensitivity, an early warning system for the second arrow. What this looks like in practice is this. The first arrow strikes. The critical email is read. Before mindfulness, the reaction is instantaneous, a fusion of stimulus and response. But now, with practice, something new happens. Instead of an immediate explosion of defensive anger, you notice the precursors. You feel the heat begin to rise in your chest. You feel the sudden tightness in your jaw. You notice the very first thought of, "How dare they?" begin to form in your mind. And right there, in that moment of noticing, a space has opened up. That moment of recognition is the pause. It may only last for a single second, but that second is a moment of profound power. You have just stepped out of the automatic, mechanical chain of reaction. You have woken up from the trance. In this sacred pause, you are no longer a machine. You are a conscious being. And as a conscious being, you have the freedom to choose. This is the crucial distinction between a reaction and a response. A reaction is unconscious, conditioned, and automatic. It is driven by the past, by all of our old wounds and habits. It is almost always unskillful, leading to more conflict and more suffering. A response, on the other hand, is conscious. It is a deliberate choice made in the present moment. A choice that we can align with our deepest values, with the wisdom and compassion we are trying to cultivate. A reaction is being pushed from behind by our conditioning. A response is being pulled forward by our intention. Let us return to the critical email. Without the pause, the sequence is stimulus-reaction. You read the email and immediately fire back an angry, defensive reply. The result is a damaged professional relationship and a stomach churning with stress for the rest of the day. With the pause, the sequence becomes stimulus mindfulness, pause response. You read the email stimulus. You feel the anger and defensiveness rising in your body. Mindfulness. You stop. You take 3 conscious breaths, the pause. You recognize that your ego feels attacked. You ask yourself, what is the most skillful and compassionate way to handle this? You choose to wait an hour. You reread the email, looking for any valid points. You formulate a reply that is calm, professional, and constructive response. The result is resolution, self-respect, and peace of mind. You have dodged the second arrow. This is the very essence of emotional freedom. It is the ability to hold our impulses in our awareness without being compelled to act on them. It is taking back the power from our primitive, reactive brain and giving it to our wise, compassionate heart. The quality of our entire life is determined not by what happens to us, but by the quality of our responses. And the quality of our responses is determined by our ability to find and inhabit that sacred space between stimulus and reaction. Mindfulness is the key that unlocks the door to that space. Each time we pause, each time we choose a conscious response over an automatic reaction, we are weakening the chains of our past conditioning and strengthening our own freedom. We stop being victims of our own lives and become their gentle and wise architects. This power to choose our response, cultivated in the quiet laboratory of our own mind, has implications that extend far beyond our own personal peace. Every choice we make, every word we speak, every action we take does not occur in a vacuum. It is a cause that sends ripples out into the world, touching the lives of others in ways we may never fully understand. This is because our individual freedom is deeply and inextricably interwoven with the lives of all beings. As we are about to discover, nothing exists by itself. This realization of our profound interconnectedness leads us to one of the most beautiful and awe-inspiring teachings on this path, the wisdom of interbeing. We have discovered, in the sacred pause between stimulus and response, the freedom to choose our own actions. This is the dawn of true self-mastery. But where does this choice lead? What is the impact of our response? Our actions do not unfold in a vacuum. Every word we speak, every act of kindness or anger, is like a stone dropped into a vast, silent lake, sending ripples outward that touch shores we may never see. This is because the most fundamental truth of our existence, a truth often veiled by our modern sense of individualism, is that of radical interconnectedness. The idea that we are separate, isolated, skin-encapsulated egos is a painful illusion. The reality is far more beautiful and profound. The ancient word for this is paticcasamuppada, or dependent origination. A more modern, poetic term, coined by the great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, is interbeing. It means that to be is to interbe. Nothing exists by itself. Everything in the universe relies on everything else for its existence. To understand this in a very direct way, let us perform a simple contemplation. Take a single sheet of paper in your mind's eye. We look at it and we say, "This is a sheet of paper." But the practice of deep looking invites us to ask, what is it made of? Our first answer is a tree, but we cannot have a tree without the forest, the soil, the sun, and the rain. So, when we look at the paper, we can see the sunshine within it. We can see the cloud that provided the rain. If we look deeply enough, we can see that if the sunshine or the cloud were not there, this sheet of paper could not be there either. Let us continue. The tree was cut down by a logger. The logger needed to eat breakfast to have the strength to do his work. So, the wheat in the field that became the bread he ate is also in this sheet of paper. The farmer who grew the wheat is in it. The logger's parents are in it, because without them, he would not exist to cut down the tree. The paper was then made in a factory. So, the people who designed the machines, the workers who operated the mill, the miners who dug the iron ore to build the factory, the electricity from the river that powered the plant, all of these people and all of these processes are present right here in this simple sheet of paper. If we were to remove any one of these elements, if we take away the cloud or the logger or the wheat farmer, the sheet of paper could not exist. It is made entirely of non-paper elements. Its existence is dependent on and interwoven with the entire cosmos. To be a sheet of paper is to interbe with the sun, the forest, and the factory worker. This is the truth of interbeing. Now, let us apply this same deep looking to ourselves. We have a strong sense of being a solid, separate me. But what is this me made of? We are made of the food we have eaten. So the farmer, the soil, the rain, and the sun are all flowing in our blood right now. We are made of the air we breathe, the water we drink. We are made of our parents, our ancestors, and the infinite chain of causes and conditions that led to their existence. Our ideas, our language, our beliefs, where did they come from? They came from our teachers, our friends, our culture, from books we have read and conversations we have had. Every person we have ever met has left a little piece of themselves with us. If we were to remove all of these non-me elements, what would be left? Nothing at all. Just like the sheet of paper, we are made entirely of non-self elements. The line we draw between ourself and the other is an artificial one, a fiction created by our minds. In reality, the universe is not something out there that we look at. The universe is flowing through us, and we are flowing through it. At every single moment, the feeling of loneliness, of being a small, isolated fragment in a vast and indifferent cosmos, is one of the most painful illusions of the human mind. The wisdom of interbeing dissolves this illusion completely. How can we be separate when we contain everything? When this understanding moves from an intellectual concept to a deeply felt reality, it revolutionizes our entire ethical and emotional world. Compassion is no longer a moral duty to be practiced. It becomes the most natural and logical response to reality. When we see that the boundary between ourself and another is porous and ultimately unreal, we understand that their suffering is not separate from our own. To cause harm to another being is, in a very real sense, to cause harm to ourselves. To help another is to help ourselves. The golden rule, to treat others as you would wish to be treated, ceases to be a lofty ideal and becomes a simple, practical manual for living in harmony with the way things are. When your left hand is injured, your right hand does not pause to ask if it is morally obligated to help. It helps immediately, naturally, because both hands are part of the same body. The wisdom of interbeing reveals that all of humanity, all of life, is part of one single body. There is a magnificent and ancient image from Buddhist cosmology that captures this vision perfectly. It is called Indra's net. Imagine a vast, infinite net stretching out in all directions. At every single point where the threads of the net cross, there hangs a single, brilliant, multifaceted jewel. The net is structured in such a way that, if you look closely at the surface of any one jewel, you will see in it the shimmering reflections of every other jewel in the entire, infinite net. And in each of those reflections, you will find the reflections of all the other jewels, and so on, forever. Each of us is a jewel in this cosmic net. We are an individual, unique perspective, yet we simultaneously contain and are contained by the whole. Every action, every thought, every feeling we have sends a vibration through the entire net, reflecting and affecting every other jewel. We are at once a singular point of light and the entire constellation. To live with this understanding is the ultimate antidote to fear, to hatred, to racism, and to the despair of isolation. It is a profound shift from an egocentric worldview, where I am the center of everything, to an ecocentric worldview, where we see ourselves as integral threads in the sacred, shimmering tapestry of life. It is the realization that our own well-being is completely inseparable from the well-being of all. When we combine this deep, heartfelt understanding of our interconnectedness with a mind that has been trained in stability and kindness, we begin to develop a new kind of spiritual maturity. We are no longer so easily tossed about by the waves of personal gain and loss, praise and blame, because we see our own small story as part of a much larger, magnificent dance. This ability to remain balanced, centered, and open-hearted in the midst of life's inevitable storms is a quality known as equanimity. It is the serene heart of wisdom. In our journey through life, we are constantly swayed by the winds of fortune. One day, we are lifted up by praise, success, or a moment of unexpected joy. The next, we are cast down by criticism, failure, or the sharp sting of loss. Our inner world often resembles a small boat tossed on a turbulent ocean, rising and falling with every wave, its direction dictated by forces beyond its control. We feel a constant push and pull, a relentless swing between elation and despair. And in this state of perpetual reaction, a true and lasting peace seems impossible. We yearn for a stable ground, an inner refuge that is not dependent on the ever-shifting circumstances of the external world. This stable ground, this profound inner balance, has a name in the Buddhist tradition. It is called upekkha, translated often as equanimity. Upekkha is one of the 4 sublime states of mind, alongside loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy. It is perhaps the most subtle and often misunderstood of them all. When we first hear of equanimity, of a mind that is not swayed by gain or loss, pleasure or pain, we might imagine a state of cold detachment, a kind of stoic indifference or emotional numbness. We might picture someone who simply doesn't care, who has shut down their heart to the world in order to protect themselves from hurt. But this is a profound misinterpretation. True upekkha is not indifference. It is not apathy. It is a state of radiant, unshakable peace, born not from a lack of feeling, but from a depth of wisdom. It is the highest and most powerful form of emotional intelligence. Indifference is born from fear and ignorance, a closing of the heart. Equanimity is born from courage and understanding, an opening of the heart so wide that it can hold the entirety of life's experiences without being overwhelmed. The indifferent person says, "I don't care." The equanimous person says, "I care deeply, but I will not be thrown off balance by what I cannot control." This profound stability arises from the direct experiential understanding of impermanence, of anicca. When you truly see, not just as an idea but as a felt reality, that all things arise and pass away, that pleasure is fleeting and pain is temporary, your frantic, clinging, and desperate aversion begin to soften. You stop trying to nail down the beautiful butterfly of a happy moment, and you stop trying to build a fortress against the inevitable storm of a difficult one. You see them both for what they are, passing weather patterns in the vast sky of your awareness. The sky does not rejoice when the sun shines, nor does it despair when the storm clouds gather. It simply holds it all. This is the nature of a mind cultivated in upekkha. The ancient teachers offered a powerful image for this quality, a great, majestic mountain. Picture this mountain in your mind. It stands immense, solid, and deeply rooted in the earth. The winds howl around its peaks, gale-force storms that would uproot the mightiest of trees. But the mountain is unmoved. The torrential rains of the monsoon lash against its slopes, carving new gullies, yet the mountain remains. The searing heat of the summer sun beats down upon it, and the heavy snows of winter blanket it in a cold silence. Clouds and fog may obscure it from view, hiding its grandeur for days or weeks. But through it all, the mountain remains. It does not fight the wind. It does not complain about the rain. It does not grasp for the sun or push away the snow. It simply is, present and steadfast, allowing the changing seasons and the passing weather to be exactly as they are. This mountain is the mind of upekkha. The winds, the rains, the sun, and the snow are the 8 worldly winds that blow constantly through our lives. Pleasure and its opposite, pain, gain and its opposite, loss, praise and its opposite, blame, fame and its opposite, disrepute. Our untrained mind is like a leaf caught in these winds, soaring with praise, plummeting with blame, puffed up with gain, shriveled by loss. We spend our lives chasing the favorable winds and running from the unfavorable ones, a state of constant anxiety and exhaustion. To cultivate upekkha is to become the mountain. It is to learn to sit still in the midst of it all, to feel the winds blow, to feel the heat and the cold, but to remain rooted in our own being, stable and unshaken. This does not mean we become passive or inactive. The mountain is not dead. It is teeming with life. And so, a mind of equanimity is not one that has ceased to love or care. In fact, it allows for a more profound and sustainable form of love. So much of what we call love, in the ordinary sense, is intertwined with attachment, with need, and with fear. We love someone because of how they make us feel. We love them for the security, the pleasure, or the validation they provide. This love is conditional and fragile. If they stop making us feel good, or if they behave in a way we don't like, our love falters. It can quickly turn to anger, resentment, or grief. It is a love that says, "I will love you as long as you meet my needs." This is not freedom. It is a contract. Upekkha offers a different way. It is the ability to love with an open hand, not a grasping fist. It is the spaciousness that allows you to care deeply for another person's well-being, while simultaneously understanding that their happiness and their suffering are, ultimately, the results of their own actions and karma. You can wish them well, support them, and offer your compassion, but you release the burden of needing them to be a certain way for you to be okay. It is the wise love of a parent who guides their child, but knows they must allow them to walk their own path, even if it means watching them fall and make mistakes. It is a love free from the anxiety of possession and the fear of loss. It is a steady, radiating warmth, not a volatile fire. This allows us to engage with the world and its suffering with a compassionate heart that does not burn out, because it is not fueled by the need for a specific outcome. Developing this mountain-like stability is the work of our practice. Every time we sit in meditation and simply watch a pleasant sensation arise without clinging to it, we are training in upekkha. Every time we feel an unpleasant emotion like anger or fear and meet it with a calm, non-judgmental awareness, instead of reacting to it, we are strengthening our upekkha. Every time we receive praise and just notice it without letting it inflate our ego, or receive criticism and just feel the sting without letting it define our worth, we are becoming the mountain. We are learning to abide in a place of deep inner balance and freedom. This is not about suppressing our feelings, but about creating enough space around them so that they no longer have the power to enslave us. We feel them fully, but we are not defined by them. When the mind begins to settle in this way, when it is no longer constantly distracted by every passing breeze of pleasure or pain, a profound clarity begins to emerge. It ceases its frantic search for happiness in the transient objects of the world because it has found a source of peace within. With a mind as steadfast as a mountain, clear and still, it naturally begins to look beyond the immediate weather patterns, towards the ultimate horizon, towards the final shore. This shore, the ultimate goal of the path, has a name. It is called nirvana. The mind that has become as stable as a mountain, a mind of deep equanimity, is no longer a victim of circumstance. It is a mind that has found its own center. From this place of profound stillness, a new kind of vision becomes possible. It is like climbing to the highest peak and, for the first time, seeing the landscape in its entirety. You see the tangled forests of confusion, the winding rivers of desire, and you also see, far in the distance, a calm and peaceful shore. In the language of the Buddha, this ultimate destination, this final liberation from all suffering, is called nirvana. It is a word that echoes with a sense of finality, of mystery, of an almost unimaginable peace. And because it is so profound, it is also a word that is deeply misunderstood. We often imagine nirvana as a kind of heavenly realm, a paradise of eternal bliss, somewhere in the clouds, a reward we might attain after we die, if we have been good. Or we might swing to the other extreme, fearing it as a state of utter annihilation, a blank nothingness where our existence is snuffed out like a candle flame. But the Buddha's teaching on nirvana was far more practical, immediate, and radical than either of these ideas. It is not a place you go to, nor is it the erasure of who you are. It is the cessation of a fever, a freedom to be discovered right here, in this very life. The literal meaning of the word nirvana is to blow out or to extinguish. This points us directly to the heart of the teaching. The question is not what is blown out, but what is burning. The Buddha identified 3 primary fires that fuel all of our discontent, all our anxiety, and all our suffering. First is the fire of greed, desire, and wanting the restless, burning thirst for more, the insatiable hunger for pleasant experiences, for possessions, for approval. It is the fire of leaning forward, always reaching for what we don't have. Second is the fire of hatred, aversion, and anger, the hot, searing flame of pushing away what we don't like, of ill will towards others or ourselves, of resistance to the reality of the present moment. And third is the fire of delusion and ignorance, the thick, confusing smoke of not seeing things as they truly are, of being trapped in our own stories, judgments, and misconceptions. These 3 fires keep us bound to a cycle of suffering, a relentless turning of a wheel, known as samsara. We burn with desire for an object. We get it, and the pleasure fades. So, we burn for something else. Or we are burned by aversion to a situation. We escape it, only to be confronted by another unpleasant reality. All the while, the smoke of ignorance clouds our vision, preventing us from seeing the very nature of the process that entraps us. Nirvana is simply the extinguishing of these 3 fires. And when a fire goes out, what is left is not nothingness. What is left is coolness, stillness, and clarity. It is the profound and indescribable relief of a fever finally breaking. It is the peace that is revealed when the causes of turmoil are removed. It is not the annihilation of the self, but the annihilation of the suffering and the illusions that we mistake for a self. To explain this journey from the burning bank of suffering to the cool shore of peace, the Buddha offered one of his most famous and powerful metaphors, the parable of the raft. Imagine, he said, that you are standing on the edge of a vast and dangerous body of water. This side of the river is perilous. There are wild beasts, there is hunger, and there is constant fear. This shore represents our ordinary life in samsara, driven by the three fires. Across the water, you can see the other shore. It is safe, secure, and peaceful. That other shore is nirvana. There is no bridge to cross this river, and no ferryman to take you. If you wish to get to the safety of the other shore, you must build your own raft. So, you begin to gather materials from the forest around you. You collect wood, vines, branches, and leaves. Mindfully and skillfully, you bind them together, constructing a vessel that is sturdy and reliable. This act of building the raft is the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path. The wood is your right view, understanding the nature of suffering. The vines are your right intention, committing yourself to the path of healing. The skillful construction is right speech, right action, and right livelihood, living in a way that is harmless and helpful. Your effort in building and paddling is right effort. Paying attention to every detail is right mindfulness, and the stability of the finished raft is right concentration. Once the raft is complete, you drag it to the water's edge and push off, leaving the dangerous shore behind. With great effort, you paddle across the turbulent currents of greed, hatred, and ignorance. At times, the journey is difficult. You are splashed by the waters of doubt and pulled by the undercurrents of old habits. But you persist, using the raft of the Dharma, the teachings, to keep you afloat and on course. Finally, after a long journey, you arrive. Your feet touch the cool, solid ground of the other shore. You have crossed the river of suffering. You are safe. You are free. Now, the Buddha asks the crucial question: what does a wise person do with the raft? A foolish person, he explained, might think, this raft has been so useful to me. It saved my life. I carried it across the great water. I should not leave it behind. And so, this person would hoist the heavy raft onto their back and continue their journey on the dry land, burdened by the very thing that had set them free. A wise person, however, would think, this raft served its purpose beautifully. It was the means for me to get from the dangerous shore to the safe shore. Now that I have arrived, it is of no more use. And so, with a feeling of gratitude, the wise person would push the raft back into the water or leave it on the bank and walk onto the new shore, light and unburdened. This is perhaps the most profound instruction about the nature of the path itself. The teachings, the practices, the rituals, the concept 7, the concept of nirvana itself are the raft. They are indispensable tools for crossing the river, but they are not the destination. The goal is not to become an expert on Buddhism, or to be able to recite all the scriptures, or to perfect a certain meditative technique. The goal is liberation. To cling to the teachings as a new identity, as a dogma, or as a source of pride, is to be the foolish person carrying the raft on their back. It becomes just another form of attachment, another subtle burden. The ultimate freedom of nirvana includes the freedom from the very path that led you there. It is a state of such radical letting go that nothing is held onto. And this is not a far-off, distant goal for some future life. The other shore is closer than you think. Every step you take on the Eightfold Path is a taste of nirvana. Every moment you are mindful of your breath, you are touching the shore of peace. Every time you choose a kind word over an angry one, you are experiencing the coolness of an extinguished fire. Every act of generosity, free from the desire for reward, is a moment of nirvana. It is the ever-present possibility of peace that is revealed whenever we stop feeding the flames of wanting, resisting, and confusion. Having used the raft to cross to this shore of profound peace, the journey to a destination is complete, but a new journey begins. How to live from this place of freedom? How do we walk on this new land in the midst of our everyday world? We have crossed the great river. Using the raft of the Dharma, the teachings of the path, we have journeyed from the shore of suffering, fueled by the burning fires of greed, hatred, and ignorance, to the cool, safe, and peaceful shore of nirvana. We have tasted a freedom that is not dependent on external conditions, a peace that arises from the very cessation of our inner turmoil. So what happens now? Do we sit on this shore of perfect peace for eternity, detached from the world we left behind? Does life, with all its demands, its complexities, and its relationships, simply fall away? This is a common fantasy of the spiritual path, that enlightenment means an end to ordinary life. But the wisdom of the masters points to a reality that is both more subtle and infinitely more integrated. The journey to the other shore was only the first half of the voyage. The second half is learning how to live there and discovering that the there is, and always was, right here. There is a famous saying from the Zen tradition that perfectly encapsulates this profound shift in perception. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. On the surface, the statement seems paradoxical, even anticlimactic. The external actions remain identical. The tasks of life do not disappear. Before achieving any insight, a person must engage in the simple, mundane activities of survival. They must gather wood for the fire and carry water from the well. After a profound awakening, a supposed transformation of consciousness, they must still do the very same things. The wood still needs to be chopped. The water still needs to be carried. The bills must be paid. The children must be fed. The work must be done. Nothing on the outside has changed, but on the inside, everything has changed. Before enlightenment, the act of chopping wood is a chore. The mind is not there. While the body goes through the motions, the mind is lost in a tangled forest of thought. It is ruminating on a past insult, worrying about a future scarcity, judging the task as boring or difficult, wishing it were doing something else. The action is laden with resistance, with the heavy weight of a self that does not want to be there. Chopping wood is an obstacle on the way to something better. It is the same with carrying water. The body strains under the weight of the buckets, but the mind is straining under the much heavier weight of its own discontent. The entire experience is filtered through the fires of wanting, aversion, and confusion. Then, the shift happens. After enlightenment, after tasting the peace of nirvana, and seeing through the illusion of a separate, struggling self, the activity of chopping wood is reborn. The wood is still wood. The axe is still an axe. But now, when the wood is chopped, there is only chopping. There is the feeling of the handle in the hands, the arc of the swing, the sharp sound as the blade bites into the grain, the scent of fresh pine that fills the air. The mind is not elsewhere. It is not telling a story about the chopping. It is not judging it, or resisting it, or wishing it were over. The mind has become quiet, vast, and present. It is one with the action. The sense of a separate me who is performing the task dissolves, and there is only the seamless, unfolding process of the moment. And when it is time to carry water, there is only carrying water. There is the feeling of the muscles in the shoulders, the shifting balance of the body, the rhythmic sound of the water sloshing in the buckets. The mundane task is no longer mundane. It has become a moving meditation, infused with a quality of sacredness, not because the task itself is sacred, but because awareness is present. This is the integration of the path. Peace is not found by arranging your life, so that you only have peaceful things to do. Peace is the ability to bring a peaceful mind to everything you do. This transforms our understanding of what it means to be at peace. We often think of peace as a fragile state, an absence of problems. We believe we will be peaceful when we have no more bills, no more difficult relationships, no more illness, no more challenges. But this is a fantasy. Life is, by its very nature, a constant flow of changing conditions. The roof will leak, the car will break down, people we love will get sick. The true peace taught by the Buddha is not a life without problems, but the inner capacity to meet all problems with wisdom and equanimity. When a challenge arises, the untrained mind adds a second, self-inflicted wound. On top of the leaky roof, we add the suffering of anger, blame, and anxiety. The integrated mind, the after-enlightenment mind, simply sees the leaky roof. It meets the reality of the situation without resistance. It feels whatever arises, perhaps annoyance, perhaps concern, but it does not get hijacked. Instead, it asks with clarity what needs to be done, and then it does it. It calls the roofer. It puts a bucket under the leak. It chops the wood and carries the water of the situation with a calm, capable heart. This journey of integration is not a straight line to perfection. To walk this path is to be human, and to be human is to stumble. There will be days, many of them, when the old habits reassert themselves. The fires of anger and greed, long dormant, will suddenly flare up. You will find yourself lost in worry, caught in judgment, reacting from a place of fear. In these moments, the most important teaching is that of compassion for yourself. The path is not about becoming a perfect, unfeeling statue on a pedestal. It is a process of learning and unlearning, of falling and getting back up. When you fall, the practice is not to berate yourself, which only adds another layer of suffering. The practice is to notice, here is anger again, or here is that old story of not being good enough. You meet your own imperfection with the same gentle, non-judgmental kindness you might offer to a child who is learning to walk. This self-compassion, this karuna, is the essential ingredient that allows you to persist. It is the understanding that every stumble is not a failure, but an opportunity to practice again. Ultimately, this path is not an escape from the world. It is a profound method for engaging with it more fully. The image of the solitary hermit in a cave is a powerful one, but for most of us, our cave is our daily life, our relationships, our work, our community. These are the places where the Dharma comes alive. When you are no longer consumed by your own inner battles, you discover a new capacity to be present for others. You can listen without planning your response. You can see the needs of your partner, your child, or your colleague with greater clarity, because your vision is not clouded by your own agenda. You become a more peaceful presence in the world, not by talking about peace, but by embodying it in your actions. The journey is the destination. There is no final graduation day where you receive a certificate of enlightenment. The practice is the moment-to-moment art of chopping your wood and carrying your water with a clear mind and an open heart. Life itself becomes the meditation, and this understanding, this complete integration, brings our entire journey full circle, leading us back to the very first moment we sought a way out of our own unease. We began this journey in the quiet darkness of the night, with a mind restless and heavy, turning over the worries of the day and the fears for tomorrow. We began in that familiar state of being overwhelmed, of feeling adrift on a turbulent sea of stress, anxiety, and a deep, underlying sense that something is not right. We came looking for a remedy, for a way to calm the storm. And along this path, we have walked together through the ancient landscape of the mind, guided by a wisdom that is as relevant today as it was 25 centuries ago. We started by giving a name to our condition, the universal illness of dukkha, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness that clings to our lives. We became brave diagnosticians of our own hearts, looking beyond the symptoms to find the true cause, not the world outside us, but the internal fires of relentless craving, aversion, and the ignorance that fans their flames. We were then given the prescription, the elegant and profound medicine of the Four Noble Truths, which assured us that a cure was possible. And we were given the treatment plan, the Noble Eightfold Path, a practical guide for healing our minds, our speech, and our actions. We have learnt to apply this medicine through the simple, powerful act of returning to our breath. We have practiced sitting with our own minds, watching the thoughts and feelings come and go without being swept away. We have learned to cultivate the boundless warmth of loving kindness and compassion for others and for ourselves. We have worked to build the mountain of equanimity in our hearts, learning to stand firm with grace amidst the winds of change. We have, in essence, undertaken a journey from identifying our suffering to understanding its cause, and finally, to actively participating in its healing. And now, at the end of this path, we arrive at the most crucial and liberating truth of all. The peace we have been seeking was never in a destination. It is not in a new job, a different partner, a bigger house, or a future moment when all of our problems are finally solved. That is the great illusion. Peace is not something you find, it is something you cultivate. It is not an external condition, but an internal capacity. It is the anchor that has been inside you all along, waiting to be dropped into the depths of your own awareness. The world will always present us with storms, with waves of gain and loss, pleasure and pain. The goal was never to calm the sea. The goal was to find the unshakable stability within our own vessel, so that we may navigate any waters with a steady hand and a calm heart. This wisdom does not belong to a special group of people in a faraway land. You do not need to become a monk or call yourself a Buddhist to claim this inheritance. The tools for this journey are already in your possession, and they are beautifully simple. You have your breath, a constant, faithful anchor to the present moment, available to you anytime, anywhere. You have your mind, a powerful instrument which, with gentle and persistent training, can be transformed from a source of torment into a source of clarity and freedom. And you have your heart, which holds a boundless capacity for compassion and love. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and the journey to inner peace begins with a single, conscious breath. It begins right now, in this moment. As you end your day, as you prepare to enter the quiet of the night once more, give yourself the greatest gift of all. Give yourself the gift of peace. Other, often neglected half is deep listening. Much of the time, we do not truly listen. We are simply waiting for our turn to talk. We listen in order to find flaws in the other person's argument, to formulate our rebuttal, to judge, and to categorize. Deep listening is the practice of setting aside our own agenda entirely. It is listening with only one intention: to help the other person feel heard and to suffer less. It means offering them the full, non-judgmental gift of our presence, without interrupting, correcting, or offering unsolicited advice. It is one of the most profound acts of compassion we can offer another human being. There is a powerful story that illustrates both sides of right speech perfectly. A man, furious about the Buddha's teachings, came to find him and unleashed a torrent of the most vile and hateful insults. The Buddha did not argue, did not defend himself, and did not react. He simply sat in silence, offering the man the gift of his deep, unwavering listening, allowing him to empty his heart of all its poison. When the man finally ran out of energy and fell silent, the Buddha spoke calmly. "My friend," he asked, "if you purchase a gift for someone and you offer it to them, but they do not accept it, to whom does that gift then belong?" The man, caught off guard, thought for a moment and replied, "Well, it would belong to me." The Buddha nodded gently. "Exactly," he said. "You have offered me the gift of your anger and your insults. I do not accept it." The man was stunned into silence, his anger completely disarmed, not by a counter-argument, but by the Buddha's unshakable peace and his refusal to participate in the cycle of hatred. This is the power of right speech. It is the wisdom to know we do not have to accept the verbal poison others try to give us, and it is the compassion to listen so deeply that we may help others heal themselves. It is the conscious choice, moment by moment, to transform our words from potential weapons into instruments of truth, kindness, healing, and connection. Our speech shapes our relationships, and just as powerfully, the work we do in the world shapes our lives and the lives of others. This leads us to consider how we can bring this same mindful, ethical quality to the very way we earn our living, the practice of right livelihood.